of it has become a topic of conversation. Wes Streeting has played a tactical blinder by exposing Andy Burnham's flip-flopping over Europe, and it could lead to him losing the Makerfield by-election. Streeting unashamedly thinks Britain should rejoin the EU, but should it just
LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, the Prime Minister has once again dismissed calls for him to set out a timetable to leave Number 10 if Andy Burnham returns to Westminster. Sir Keir Starmer says he wants to lead Labour into the next general election.
I feel very strongly that I must serve the people who voted me into office. Do I recognise that we've got to turn things around after those election results? Yes, of course I do. And obviously a lot of people in the Labour Party have been talking about what has to happen next. I recognise that. But it is really important, I think, for me at least, to remind myself, why am I in politics? I came in to serve my country.
Earlier, Mr Burnham vowed to change Labour if he is selected to run in the Makerfield by-election and wins the seat. It's understood the current Mayor of Greater Manchester will trigger a leadership contest if he does, but Labour MP for Leeds Central and Headingley, Alex Sobel, has told Tonight with Andrew Marr he's doubtful that will happen.
It's not my expectation. I expect that he would come back and potentially serve in the government, try and help us turn this government round. And if then that didn't work, or somebody else, and I think that maybe somebody else who's intending to trigger a leadership election triggered one, then that's a different scenario.
The Prime Minister says whoever becomes Labour's candidate will have his support 100%. A specialist team from Finland have collected the information they need to recover the bodies of 4 scuba divers in the Maldives. The Italian nationals who went missing last week were found earlier in underwater caves. Their instructor's body was discovered previously. Parents could soon be punished for their children's crimes as part of reforms to the youth justice system. Judges in England and Wales could give out fines and even jail time in extreme cases. Stephen Akinsanya is a criminal barrister and CEO of Life of Focus, a youth mentoring organisation. He's told Tonight with Andrew Marr parents need to take more responsibility.
By the time they get to 10, they're already forming their own opinions on things, their own relationships. They're already learning that no is not something that is used in the home. And then you've lost control already. And that's why I'm an advocate of youngsters under the age of 10 being educated about things such as knife crime.
The International Monetary Fund has raised its growth forecast for Britain's economy this year, but it says the Iran war will still dampen the outlook. The IMF believes GDP will rise by 1%, but that would still represent a slowdown from 2025. Maheen Khan is the economics editor of The Times. She's told Andrew Marr hearing Andy Burnham saying he would follow current fiscal rules if he was in Number 10 has encouraged the markets.
Yes, the government bond markets today have not been particularly sort of scary. Friday was a pretty tough day across the world, but definitely for the UK. So bizarrely enough, the IMF, intentionally or not, may have had more of a say in shaping some of the parameters of our fiscal debate than they probably would have liked.
And the RMT has called off strikes by drivers on the London Underground planned for this week. Members were due to stage 2 24-hour walkouts from midday tomorrow and then again on Thursday. It's in a dispute over voluntary compressed 4-day working weeks. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 128 points at 10,323. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather: rain sweeping into the northeast and turning windy tonight. Showers in the southwest and Northern Ireland by dawn, lows of 3. Staying windy tomorrow, rain clearing to sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be heavy and thundery, highs of 19 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 7:04 on LBC. I'm Iain Dale with you until 10. Ross has texted in to say, I'm guessing West Ham and Newcastle are now added to the banned word list on the programme. Exactly right. I have to say that. And if you're watching on Global Player, on the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel, you will see that I'm resplendent in my Andy Burnham tribute shirt today. You should see the shorts under the desk. Unfortunately for her, Aggie cat. No, I'm not wearing shorts. After seeing Andy Burnham. No one wants to see a mid-50s man in shorts, do they? Goodness me. And that is going to be the subject of our first hour. Not Andy Burnham shorts, but the fact that Wes Streeting, I think, has played an absolute blinder. I'm not sure whether he meant to do it or not, but by bringing up Brexit, he's effectively... I would say stands a good chance of getting rid of his main opponent if there is a Labour Party leadership election. Why do I say that? Because, of course, Andy Burnham is trying to get selected, don't think he's going to have to try too hard, to be honest, as the Labour candidate in the Makerfield by-election. Makerfield is a very, very Brexity constituency. And Andy Burnham, has made some very pro-European comments in the past, but has also made some not so pro-European comments in the past. Well, these pro-European comments that he's made have effectively been highlighted by the fact that Wes Streeting on Saturday, in a speech to a Progress conference, said that he thought that Britain should go back into the EU. Now, I've always taken the view that if you believe that, why on earth wouldn't you have the courage of your convictions and come out and say it? I've always criticised the Liberal Democrats for pussyfooting around on this. Too many Labour MPs have pussyfooted around on it. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to do within a political party to have a debate on whether something should happen. And Wes Streeting has sparked that debate by making this speech on Saturday. And of course, Andy Burnham has now had to flip-flop and basically say, oh, no, I don't think it would be good to reopen this debate, as you heard in the news bulletins there. Well, I don't want to get into a debate on the pros and cons of Brexit in this hour, but I do want to ask you this. If Labour had that as in their manifesto at the next election, would it make you more likely or less likely to support them? And the narrative goes that if you live in a metropolitan area and you're a middle-class person who votes Labour, you're more likely to think, yep, I would be more likely to continue to vote Labour if they promised that. Whereas if you are in a red wall seat, the opposite is the case. And if Andy Burnham loses this by-election because of this issue, and of course Reform UK will make sure that it is front and centre of the campaign, that will have a major impact on who our next Prime Minister will or won't be. So if this is in Labour's manifesto, do you think it would then require a referendum? I mean, that would be a second referendum, wouldn't it? Because personally, I think if you have a referendum to come out, surely you have to have a referendum to go back in. 0345 6060 973. Aggie Chambray is LBC's deputy political editor. She's been following the events of the day, and Keir Starmer has been speaking today. I'm not sure we learnt an awful lot from what he said. Andy Burnham has also made an important intervention, a speech at lunchtime.
He has indeed. I mean, Keir Starmer said that he wants to stand again at the next election, which I thought his language around that was pretty interesting, not saying I will be standing again at the next election. But no, the argument of the day still seems to be about the European Union. And that, of course, is because Andy Burnham is trying to stand in Makerfield in that by-election, where there was over 5,000 majority at the last general election. The locals, though, much, much worse. But that constituency in 2016 in the Brexit referendum was 65% Leave. And Andy Burnham's comments that he made in September 2025 have been pointed out by Reform UK, among others, who, as you say, they are absolutely delighted that this is the issue being talked about before really the campaign has even begun. But that debate was really kicked off by what the former Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, said on Saturday.
Leaving the European Union was a catastrophic mistake. The Vote Leave campaign deluded itself into thinking that the UK could forge a global free trade nirvana, as though we still had the East India Company at our disposal. They were totally blind to the zero-sum world the extreme right and their fellow travellers were creating, a dog-eat-dog world of dictators and oligarchs. where middle powers going it alone is a fantasy. It's left us less wealthy, less powerful, and less in control than at any point before the Industrial Revolution. We can no longer afford to be silent about it. We must remake the argument. In 2026, the British people increasingly see that in a dangerous world we must club together, both to rebuild our economy and trade and improve our defence against the shared threats from Russian aggression and the retreat of America first. The biggest economic opportunity we have is on our doorstep. We need a new special relationship with the EU because Britain's future lies with Europe and one day, back in the European Union.
So Wes Streeting saying there in his first intervention since quitting as Health Secretary that one day he wants to be back in the European Union. And that's actually similar to what Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester and now will be probably contender in that Makerfield by-election, said last September.
Rejoin the EU or stay out?
Long term, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say it. I want to rejoin. I hope in my lifetime I see this country rejoin the European Union. I'm absolutely clear about that. I believe in unions of all kinds. The union that is the UK, the European Union benefited this country. Trade unions, people prosper more when they're part of unions of countries or whatever.
But Iain, that rather contrasts with what he said on the same issue. rather contrasts with what he said on the same issue today when he appeared at the Great North Summit in Leeds.
My view is that Brexit has been damaging, but I also believe the last thing we should do right now is rerun those arguments. Britain will be stuck in a permanent rut if we're just constantly arguing and people are pulling away from each other. It is time, surely, isn't it, to bring people back together, to focus on what we've got in common, to get the growth coming to all places so it's felt there. That is what we need in this moment.
So I suppose the heavy lifting there could be Andy Burnham saying right now, talking about not wanting to rerun those arguments right now. And, in that first clip of him that I played, he was talking about one day in his lifetime rejoining. So I suppose you could draw. No,
you're characteristically being far too kind to him there. This is yet another example of his flakery, saying to one audience one thing and another audience another. He might as well be a Liberal Democrat.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the Liberal Democrats because they have actually accused him of U-turning before he's even been elected over his Brexit stance. But that's exactly what we are going to see him doing over the next month. Not necessarily the accusations you threw out, but we are going to see him trying to talk to two different audiences at the same time. So he's trying to talk to Labour Party members who, the majority of which would like to be back in the European Union or would like a closer relationship with the European Union. And then he's also talking to a constituency in Makerfield where 65% of people voted leave. And that is a tricky balancing act. And we can see what he's done today is choose the latter, which makes sense because he is trying desperately to get or selected and then elected there next month.
Aggie, thank you very much. That's Aggie Chambray, LBC's Deputy Political Editor. Well, Paul Richards is a former advisor to Labour cabinet ministers in the Blair and Brown governments and also ran for the party in the 2024 election. Paul, very good evening. You wrote a book, which I published, called Be Your Own Spin Doctor. How do you think Andy Burnham's doing in that regard?
Well, he has captured the public imagination, I suppose, as the sort of king of the north and all that. And his, whole king over the water shtick seems to be going down well. But he is now going to be subject to a lot of scrutiny of the things he's said and done. And he's going to have to justify himself in a very public way through this by-election process, should he be the candidate. I mean, where's his speech, by the way? Any Labour leader could have issued pretty much the same set of words, apart from the last 8 words in the speech, which was, I'd like to rejoin the EU one day. Up till that point, Keir Starmer could have said it about greater integration, more trade, closer to our closest trading partners and all of that. So, I don't think it was this carefully calibrated trash Burnham tactic that some people are saying it is. I think he was just saying out loud the thing that we all just think anyway.
But that's the effect it's had, isn't it? I mean, it's put Andy Burnham on the back foot at the very moment he doesn't need to be on the back foot.
Well, he would have been quizzed on his position on the EU at any point during this campaign because of Reform standing in. They're not going to not mention it, are they? In what they know to be a very Brexity seat, and they're putting a candidate up, and they want to win, and all the rest of it. So, of course, it would come up one way or the other. I don't think it was triggered by Wes's quite long speech. I was in the room for that speech. It was a very full speech with lots of ideas in it. Didn't mention anywhere in the speech, by the way, that he was going to stand for leader. And then a journalist asked the question with great choreography and drama. And then he said, yes, I declare as leader. But, before that point, he had set out a quite lengthy, detailed prospectus from his revisionist socialist position, as he's putting it. And the Europe thing was just part of that bigger picture. So, I'm afraid it's not like this is new, is it? We are talking about Brexit, but we have been talking about Brexit for 10 years or more.
That is true. And if Wes Streeting becomes Prime Minister at the end of this, and it's a possibility, I'd say a possibility more than a probability at the moment, but you never know. What appetite is there in the Labour Party for this to be a manifesto promise in 2028, 2029? Or do you think that all they would do is promise a referendum, which would be a sort of slightly weaker promise?
I honestly don't think you'd get either of those things. I think you would have warm words about greater integration, more trade, getting closer on defence. But I don't think a Labour manifesto in 2 years' time, if that's the question, Ian, would contain either a referendum or be going back into the EU, because I don't think that's where the public is. And I don't think that would be very good politics either. So I just feel, the noises from Starmer and others is that this is a settled question, but that doesn't mean we have to completely cut our nose off to spite our face and not get closer to Europe on trade and on defence. Those things will be in the manifesto, I imagine, regardless, of course, who is the leader, whether it's Burnham or Al Cairns or Wes Streeting or Keir Starmer.
Or Angela Rayner.
Or Angela Rayner. And I'll be blessed by a huge array of talent there that we can choose from.
And who are you throwing your ever-decreasing weight behind, Paul? By which I mean that. Sorry, that sounded
physical weight. I hope you mean rather than political.
That sounded awful. I didn't mean it in an awful way at all. But you've lost a lot of weight over the past year or so, haven't you?
Yes, indeed. Yes, weight, but not stature. I like to think.
Who are you going to support?
I don't know at this stage.
Oh, come off it!
Right now, Starmer is the leader, and he's got my support. If we have a leadership contest, I want to hear the prospectuses from the different candidates. To be honest, because it's such a huge, vast, important decision. First time in my lifetime where I get to choose a prime minister, not a leader of the Labour Party. I'm going to see what the candidates have to say. We don't even know who the candidates are. There isn't even a contest. We haven't even triggered the starting gun yet. So let's just wait and see.
Well, if you don't support Wes Streeting, I'll be very surprised.
Well, let's maintain that thought. Let's hold that thought. Let's see where we are in a few weeks' time, shall we?
Dear, all these political commentators who won't nail their colours to a mast. Paul, thank you very much indeed. That's Paul Richards, former Labour advisor. Right, we are going to talk to Lucy Harris, former Brexit Party and Conservative MEP and former Conservative Special Advisor, in a moment, to see what she makes of what might happen in the Makerfield by-election, and indeed whether Brexit is going to be the predominant issue. And if Labour do commit to going back into the EU, what form of commitment would that be? And what I want to hear from you is whether you think it's something that does need an open discussion. As I said last week, I've always been very surprised that the Rejoin the EU movement hasn't been as vocal as you might have thought it would be. Well, maybe this is the moment that they can take, the opportunity they can take to make it be that moment. It's 17 minutes past 7.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
We honestly believe that he didn't know.
Straight to the point.
Has this country become almost ungovernable?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Where there should be vision, there is a vacuum.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
Hi, I'm Sava, founder of Cool U, the daddy of air conditioning. For over 15 years, Cool U have specialised in installing our fully internal aircon systems with no mess, no fuss, and no external condenser. Perfect for modern apartments, conservation areas, listed properties, or simply for those who don't want an ugly unit on the outside. Head to coolu.london. Cool U, for a cool, comfortable home.
With the birthday draw, Global and ITV give you the chance to win a life-changing £1 million. In fact, the birthday draw is the only weekly draw where you can win £1 million for just £1. So, enter before midnight on Sunday from as little as £1 or via post at thebirthdaydraw.com. Is it your lucky day? From Global and ITV.
T's and C's apply. 18 plus UK only. No purchase necessary. Verify at thebirthdaydraw.com/terms.
Daniel liked how easy it was to transfer his old pensions to PensionBee.
I've had quite an eclectic career, and with that I'd amassed pensions from a couple of different providers. I signed up using the app. It was really straightforward. I was able to give them a couple of key facts about each of my pensions, and then PensionBee did the rest of the work for me.
At PensionBee, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Download the app or go to pensionbee.com. and be pension confident. When investing, your capital is at risk.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
19 minutes past 7 on LBC. 0345 6060 973. Do you think that we should have a national debate about going back into the EU? You all know my views on Brexit. I think we were, excuse me, I think we were right to leave. I certainly wouldn't vote to go back in, but I do not fear a debate on it at all. And Wes Streeting seems to have put rocket fuel under that debate at the moment. If the Labour Party at the next election promised that in some shape or form over the next 5 years, they would seek to negotiate Britain's entry back into the EU, is that something that would make you more likely to vote Labour or less likely to vote Labour? And I particularly want to hear from you if you do live in one of these red wall seats, because I don't know. I don't live in one, so I can't honestly sit here and say that I know that everybody who voted Brexit in those particular seats, or the vast majority of them, would still want Britain to be out of the EU. I don't think the arguments have materially changed at all, personally, but you may disagree. 0345 6060 973. And if they were to promise that, should there be another referendum? Lucy Harris is a former Brexit Party and Conservative MEP, also former Conservative Special Advisor. Lucy, very good evening to you. How much of an issue do you think this is going to be in the Makerfield by-election?
Well, I think it could be a significant issue. I mean, there's so many different things you could choose from if you were Reform, if you wanted to make an argument against Andy Burnham. I mean, obviously, you've got grooming gangs issues, you've got immigration issues. Bringing up those particular topics are quite bruising for him. But on the EU, it sort of almost symbolises a way of thinking which seems to prevalate through the Labour Party. Keir started it off last week in his King's speech talking about closer relationships with the EU. And one really has to start thinking, was that the initial sort of thing that the Labour Party really wanted to get to grips of as soon as they got in? Did they really want to aim all of their efforts at making, the country a richer place? Or was it really just to get even for the EU referendum, in which many of the Labour Party politicians voted for Remain and supported Remain? I think it's going to be a big issue, and I hope that Reform do make it a big issue for Andy Burnham, because when you're a politician who I think puts your name behind remaining within the European Union and then wanting to continue to remain in the European Union when the majority of your electorate has voted out, I think that should be highlighted. It shows a complete difference of opinion, and it doesn't align with his local community's values.
Jacob Rees-Mogg has said today that he believes that Reform and the Conservatives should cooperate with each other in Makerfield, and that the Conservatives shouldn't field a candidate. Now, I regard it as 99% unlikely that Kemi Badenoch would agree to do that. Do you think she should?
Yeah, this is really interesting because it's highly political. If the Conservatives were to put in a candidate and then put resource behind that candidate and campaign hard with that candidate, it basically says to Reform that we don't really want to have a deal with you down the line, or we are still going to be difficult right until the very end. I personally can see why they wouldn't put up a candidate and why they shouldn't put up a candidate. But likewise, I think that they would probably want to try and save face and not put resource behind it. And I think you can see that in a lot of seats in the north. They did that in the Gorton and Denton by-election. There wasn't much resource put towards that seat. Not that seat was particularly as high stakes.
If you're a national party, surely you have to put up a candidate to give any Conservative in that seat the opportunity to vote for the party that they want to vote for.
Yeah, absolutely, certainly. And of course they would do that. But would you put the amount of resource you could do? No. So that might be a way around it. And I think perhaps there is that question. You want to give Reform the best shot at it, because I haven't looked at the polling, but Andy Burnham obviously has a massive problem for Nigel and Reform. But looking at a general election, when you have both Kemi, Andy and Nigel up against each other, how does the cake get cut then? Does it work in their favour or does it not work in their favour? And I think that would be really interesting to know sort of in advance of making that call for the Tory party of how much resource they put behind that seat. I think also very interestingly is Restore with my good old friend Rupert Lowe, my former colleague in the Brexit party, is now putting up somebody in that seat. And if that sort of cuts through, I'm not sure how much Restore does cut through these days. I mean, online they have a very big presence, but I think electorally on the ground, perhaps not so much. But if they were to take away critical votes from Reform, that would be a slight irony, I think, for Reform, considering that's the game that was played with the Conservatives for the best part of decades.
You look at what happened in the Runcorn by-election, which Sarah Pochen won by 6 votes for Reform. Exactly. Any intervention by Rupert Lowe, and as you say, he is putting up a candidate, a local small businesswoman, I read. I mean, that could actually make the difference between Reform winning it or not. Lucy, thank you. That's Lucy Harris there, former Brexit Party MEP. Ian says, I was born in the Makerfield constituency and live a few miles away in Wigan. I just don't trust Burnham. I genuinely think he will say we must honour the Brexit agreement, but if he was elected, I think he would change his tune in Westminster. And that's the problem when you get a reputation for either flip-flopping or saying what your audience you think wants to hear. Aid says, if Burnham loses because of Streeting's cynical gamesmanship, Streeting will go on to lose the Labour leadership election, equals Starmer. I actually think it would be equals Angela Rayner, personally, because I've said right from the beginning, I think that she is the most likely to come through the middle in this. I may well be proved wrong, I often am, but that's just what my gut is telling me. Stuart says, can just make the next election a de facto referendum if a party has rejoined in their manifesto and they win, back in we go. Well, to me, that's the coward's way out. Yes, you can put it in your manifesto, but you've got all sorts of other things in that manifesto, and surely this is a constitutional issue, and constitutional issues are normally voted on in a referendum. I mean, just because the SNP has independence in their manifesto, does that mean that there shouldn't be a referendum on independence? I don't think so. I really don't. Well, this has just appeared online, what appears to be Andy Burnham's first campaign advert video. It features music from bands from the Manchester area, what a surprise, including Oasis, James, and underneath the bit we're about to hear, Elbow. Here's a little bit of what Andy Burnham says in it.
It was growing up in and around these streets that I saw what Thatcher's government did to places like this, the deindustrialisation, the draining away of economic, social and political power. It left places like Makerfield behind, and Britain has been on that path for the last 40 years, and it was the sense of injustice I got about the way this country is run that took me towards politics. So I went into politics to fight for ordinary people. I fought for the miners here and the compensation we got from the last Labour government, for justice for the Hillsborough families. And also, when Boris Johnson's government tried to treat people here like second-class citizens during COVID, I fought back.
What all of these experiences have taught me is that Westminster doesn't work for people in this part of the world and communities like this across the UK.
See, that's a perfect example of a video that doesn't work on audio, isn't it? I mean, it just didn't work just listening to that with the background music there. I suspect visually it would have been much more impressive. But if that's really what Andy Burnham's going to fight this by-election on, I'm not sure that's enough to cut through. To blame it all on Margaret Thatcher, I mean, that is the lazy politician's way out of everything, isn't it? Oh, well, it was all Margaret Thatcher's fault. She left office 35 years ago, for goodness sake. Let's go to Bill, who is in Swindon. Hello, Bill.
Hey, Ian, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Just before I say it was all Thatcher's fault, but anyway, that's not what I'm trying to say. Look, just because this constituency voted, was it 65% leave?
Yeah.
10 years ago? Demographics have changed a lot in 10 years. People change their mind. I don't think it's the slam dunk you seem to think it is.
Well, I didn't say it was a slam dunk.
Oh, you were certainly giving that impression, Ian.
I think that it's unlikely that if you had a referendum in that constituency, there would be a majority in favour of rejoining. I have to say, I don't think things have changed that much. Yes, of course, demographics change over 10 years. Inevitably, that is the case. But I mean, I'm really more interested in the longer term and the national position. If Labour did have this in their manifesto, whether there ought to be another referendum. And I can't predict what would happen in that. If you look at a lot of the polls at the moment, it really would be a clear victory for rejoin, I suspect. But I mean, polls were wrong last time, weren't they?
Well, indeed. I think realistically, if it was a manifesto commitment, it could only be to have another referendum, which would then just subject us to another 2 years of complete bloody nonsense. But like the old certainties, I think, are long gone. I think a big part of where Burnham's going to go, I think it depends on who reforms stand. If they put up some Tory retread, then I think people will be more relaxed about what Burnham may or may not have said about a referendum.
Well, we will soon find out because the by-election is being held on the 18th of June. We don't know who the other candidates are. Well, in fact, we don't even know who the Labour candidate is at the moment. That'll be confirmed, I think, on Thursday. And, of course, when we do know, we have to read them all out if we mention one of them, as you all know. Right, we'll take more of your calls. Should there be a referendum if Labour decide to commit to rejoin? 0345 6060 973. 7:31 on LBC. Amelia Cox has the news headlines.
The Prime Minister continues to reject calls to set out a timetable to leave Number 10 if Andy Burnham returns to Westminster. The Greater Manchester Mayor has promised to change Labour after saying he would run in the Makerfield by-election. The bodies of all 5 people who went missing during a scuba diving trip in the Maldives have now been located. A specialist team found the remaining 4 people this morning after their instructor was found last week. And parents could be jailed for their child's crime as part of reforms to the youth justice system. The government wants them to face harsher repercussions to force them to address their child's behaviour. LBC weather, rain sweeping into the northeast and turning windy tonight. Showers in the southwest and Northern Ireland by dawn. Lows of 3 degrees.
This is LBC.
Your time is valuable. Your perspective should be too. The Economist cuts through the noise with the stories that truly shape your world.
How can you believe that a new regime won't crush you just like the previous one? Online scams are stranger than they've ever been.
When the world's turned upside down, know which way is up. Read, watch, or listen to The Economist.
Now, focus on your car. That's right, the one you're ready to sell. See it clearly in your mind, waiting to be sold. We can make it disappear. Just watch carefully. Your car sold, collected and paid for in almost no time at all. It's not magic, it's motorway. Sell your car today at motorway.co.uk.
I'm Will Buxton.
I'm Naomi Schiff.
I'm David Coulthard.
And I'm Jolie Shaw.
This is Up to Speed. Available every Monday and Thursday on Global Player or wherever you get your podcasts.
When they're racing across a faraway land, when the clock's ticking and money's dwindling,
when you don't know how they'll make it to the next stop.
I can't believe they're so lost.
You got lost going to the supermarket.
It was just that one time.
Nothing brings us together like great TV. And the TV licence covers you to watch all TV channels so you can enjoy the journey of your favourite adventure travel show. Search TV licence together.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:33 on LBC. Right, we're asking you about Wes Streeting's suggestion that he thinks that Britain should rejoin the EU. There seems to be a bit of scepticism about whether he would actually bring that about if he became Prime Minister. But, I mean, it's such a big issue that he did mention it in his first speech when he declared that he would be a candidate, that you kind of think, well, he's kind of got religion on this subject. He's always been very pro-European. So is that more likely to make you vote Labour if you think Labour would take us back into the EU? And what he's done with this, whether he meant to or not, is put Andy Burnham on the back foot and also put the Liberal Democrats on the back foot, because almost with those 8 words, he has effectively put himself out there as the most pro-European mainstream British politician, because even Ed Davey is only arguing to go back either into the single market or the customs union. 0345 6060 973. Damien is in Valencia in Spain. Hello, Damien.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. What would you like to say?
Well, it's partly to do with what you said about you would not want to rejoin the EU, which is like everybody's entitled to their own opinion. And it's also with what Wes Streeting says and Andy Burnham. So when I listened to the speech by Andy Burnham today about what he was going to do, and I was expecting him to sort of follow suit with Wes Streeting saying about rejoining. Because like when you said about you wouldn't want to rejoin and who would, when you look at it, I've lived and worked outside of the EU outside of Britain in the EU for many years. And at the time of the referendum, we wasn't allowed to have a vote. If we wasn't living in England, any expat wasn't allowed to have a vote to vote to whether to stay or remain or leave.
Is that true?
And just pardon?
Is that true? That's not my memory. I mean, if you're on the electoral register and
no, but that's the problem. If you're not on the electoral register, which a lot of expats are not because they live in Europe.
Yeah, but you can still vote in general elections.
Only if you're on the electoral register in England.
Yeah.
If you're not on the electoral register, you can't vote.
Yes, you do have to be on the electoral register, but you don't actually have to live in Britain to be on the electoral register. I know that sounds perverse, but many people vote from abroad.
Well, maybe I've got it very wrong, but like where I am right now, I've got 4 English friends, all that live out here, and all have lived out here for the last 15, 20, 25 years, and not one of them was allowed to vote in the referendum.
Well, I think at that time, the rules were you had to have lived in Britain within the last 15 years to be able to vote. Those rules have changed now.
Okay. Well, like I said, maybe I'm wrong. But even when at the time of the referendum, so I was living in the French Alps, and there was probably just in the ski resorts at the time of the referendum, there was probably, I don't know, 5,000 English people that weren't allowed to vote because we was working abroad and wasn't on the electoral register.
Well, that may have been their fault that they're not on the electoral register. But if they had lived in Britain since 2001, they would have been entitled to a vote if they bothered to put themselves on the electoral register.
Maybe I totally understand it, and you should be corrected then. But at the time, because I was desperate to vote to remain in the EU.
Yeah.
And whatever avenue I walked down, I wasn't able to. So,
well, rest assured that if there was another referendum in the next few years, you would be entitled to vote if you had put yourself on the electoral register. It does actually mean that you have to do that work. They're not going to do it for you.
Oh, absolutely. At the time of doing it, I was, I showed every interest. I explored every avenue to do that, but because I didn't have a house of a place of residence in the UK. Every doorstep I got to was no, you can't. Like every hurdle, shall I say, was no, you can't. You can't register to vote because you're not got a place of residence inside the UK.
Well, I think you were badly misinformed there, because what you would have done is you would have gone into the constituency that you had last lived in, assuming it was since 2001.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I must have got it wrong, under which case I apologise. All I can say now is I really hope that they do have talks about rejoining, because I think that's, like, united, we're strong with what's going on in the world. I think now being imprisoned on an island, because I still live in the UK, I'm just out here at the moment doing work on my farm project that I'm doing. And for me, it would be a massive thing to rejoin. And I think together, just look what's happened over the last year with the Iran invasion and the Straits of Hormuz. Then a couple of years ago, which was going on the Ukraine.
But what's that got to do with the EU?
Well, it's all to do with it, because we're, as British people, we're now it's just us on an island. We're not really part of anything. We've not got any.
Sorry, Damien, which country was it in 2022 that led Europe on the reaction to the Russian invasion of Ukraine? It wasn't Spain, it wasn't France, it wasn't Germany, it was Britain.
No, it was Britain.
Yeah.
No, it's not saying we don't lead the way in certain areas, but compared to how we was 50 years ago, when Britain was great, and so on and so forth, we haven't got the power we have like we used to. And as part of Europe, we was like the bigger the European Union is, surely the stronger it is to stand up to things like Russia and like America if it does.
Yeah, but my point was that the fact that we led the European reaction to that shows that you don't actually have to be a member of the European Union to be sort of allies with the European Union. Which country is it that's got the fifth largest economy in the world? Is it France? No, it's us. Is it Italy? No, it's us.
To a certain degree, that's a bit slew, because when you look, like, I'm not a rich person, I don't have a lot of money, and most of the United Kingdom don't. Most of the United Kingdom is living in poverty.
Well, that's totally wrong. There are some people who live in poverty, absolutely, just as there are in Switzerland, the richest country in Europe.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not denying that fact at all. What I'm saying is that I'm not against the United Kingdom. I'm not against England. I've always been quite patriotic, but it's when you go through of what being on the what the work I do and where what you see on a day-to-day basis. Generally, we're not a rich country. There's a small percentage that makes the country rich, but as a general rule, the people are poor.
Well, I think you should spend more time in this country before you come out with things like that. But there we are. Damien, thank you very much. Julian says, of course there would have to be a referendum to rejoin. Would it make me more likely to vote Labour if rejoin was their policy? Yes, it absolutely would, says Julian. Right, let's go to Anthony in Ashford. Hi, Anthony.
Well, good evening, Ian. Yes, I will address your main topic shortly. Do you mind if I just comment on Andy Burnham?
If you wish.
Yes, thank you. Well, if I was playing a bed for Andy Burnham, it would be Yesterday by the Beatles, because he's wallowing in the politics and economics of nearly 50 years ago, of the era of Michael Foot.
Well, it could be on June the 19th that all his dreams seem far away.
Yeah, well, I think they're going to be. And talking about dreams, Wes Streeting. Now, I'm beginning to wonder if he's actually a Keir Starmer shill. Because by throwing this firecracker into the fire of this EU referendum, is there an appetite in the country for going through all that again? The last 10 years, the ups and downs, the turmoil, Theresa May's battles, we remember College Green, don't we? All that sort of palaver on there, night after night, trying to get that vote through. Do we want to go through that again? I hardly think so. And I think it sort of plays to Starmer somewhat, because there was a thing called the third way. Anthony Giddens. Mm-hmm. And his sort of formula is a kind of third way, isn't it? We're not going to be too pro-EU, but we're going to make a little inch towards. And we're going to, steer a middle course for the moment. And with the economy, the private and public sector, we're not going to try and nationalise everything in sight. This was Blair's kind of philosophy to kind of a mixed economy. We're not swinging back to Marxism, but we're not in full-blown Thatcherism. And I think that's where, in some ways, it plays well for Starmer.
OK, Anthony, thank you very much. Now, this is an out-of-date text here. It is from Sergio, who says, Iain, the UK is the 6th largest economy in the world. India is the 5th. So out of date, because it was about a month ago that Britain overtook India. You can check it out with all the statistics, but it was in all of the papers, Sergio, so I'm surprised you don't know that. Let's go to James in Gravesend. Hello, James.
Good evening, Iain. How are you?
Terribly well, James. Apart from my horrible trip to St James's Park yesterday, which was actually enjoyable apart from the result. But there we go. I digress. Yeah. James, what's your point?
Well, first of all, I think the Parliamentary Labour Party have learned all the worst lessons from the Tories in relation to kicking out sitting prime ministers. I don't agree with it. I never agreed with it with your lot, and I certainly don't agree with the Labour Party. Okay, that's one thing. I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park for Andy Burnham, particularly over immigration. The immigration plays out well for reform in those red wall seats. Now, as for the European Union, there would have to be a referendum to go back in. The people.
I think James's line has given up there. Let's see if we can get him back, shall we? Amy says, "Night, Iain. I'm not bothered about who's Prime Minister. Let them fight it out, to be honest." What an ignorant text that is. You're not bothered about who's Prime Minister. I mean, what kind of citizen are you if you're not bothered about who's Prime Minister? Absolutely crackers. 7:45.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Is Brexit going to hang around the neck of the next Labour leader, whoever that may be?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Your time is valuable. Your perspective should be too. The Economist cuts through the noise with the stories that truly shape your world.
How can you believe that a new regime won't crush you just like the previous one? Online scams are stranger than they've ever been.
When the world's turned upside down, know which way is up. Read, watch, or listen to The Economist.
For whoever they want to be in life, give them a great start with WellKid. Carefully balanced, great-tasting vitamins and minerals for 4 to 12-year-olds with specific nutrients such as zinc and vitamin D, which support normal immune system function. The WellKid range from Vitabiotics, from Boots, pharmacies and vitabiotics.com.
Hey there, it's your big McDonald's hunger calling. And it's not just any kind of hunger. It's the kind that calls for big arch. Start with juicy beef, cheddar cheese and big arch sauce. Oh, and don't forget those crispy onions. Hungry? You are now. Served from 11 a.m, subject to availability. Price and participation may vary.
At John Lewis Money, we know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap. And the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Ooh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Iain Dale on LBC.
7:47. I've been very remiss in not telling you who's on Cross Question in just 13 minutes' time. We have the journalist and broadcaster Paul Mason, who's a columnist for the New World newspaper, Dr Luke Evans, Conservative Shadow Health Minister and MP for Hinckley and Bosworth, former GP, Rachel Maskell, the Labour MP for York Central, and Laura McEvatt, former Conservative political advisor, who's co-presenter of the podcast The Welsh Politics Pod, which does what it says on the pod. Right, let's go back to your calls. We have James back on the line. I don't know what happened there, James, but we lost you, and I'm sure you were going to make a very incisive point.
Well, I think I just might have. But first of all, how is everybody done in Pembury? Are they well?
Well, I don't know. I haven't been there for 48 hours.
Yes, well, first of all, I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park for Andy Burnham, okay, in that constituency, considering the local elections results. Secondly, if the only reason why he wants to get elected is to despoil challenge the Prime Minister and take his job to go into number 10, then I don't like that kind of stuff. I didn't like it when your lot were doing it, kicking out sitting Prime Ministers. I'm very much against it, okay?
Would you have been against it in 1940 when Churchill replaced Chamberlain?
That was slightly different, right?
Was it?
Yeah, that was slightly different. There was a world war going on and we were losing, okay? But there isn't a world war going on at the moment. There are conflicts going on, yes, but it's not a global conflict.
We could have a debate about that, but okay.
Yeah, we could have a debate about it. But then, I never had a problem with, apart from Liz, because she should never have been leader of the Tory party. I think we can both agree with that. But in terms of the European Union, we had a referendum to leave. We would have to have a referendum to go back in. You can't do it on let's do it on the back of a fag packet.
Well, you could say, look, this is in our manifesto. If you vote for us, this is what's going to happen. So they could argue that it was a sort of mini referendum.
They can argue as much as the cows come home, but we all know the score. They can put it in a manifesto, but how many people read manifestos? The only people who read manifestos are the people like me who are politically engaged, and I probably...
Oh, I thought you were going to say sad.
Pardon?
I thought you were going to say sad.
Yeah, that as well, mate. That as well, yeah. Knowing me. But I think it should be for the people, as I say, the people voted to leave. The people should have the right to say whether they wish to rejoin.
OK, thank you very much, James. Let's move on to Mark, who's a new caller in Horsham. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Ian. I completely agree with the last caller. I think we voted to leave, so we should have a referendum if anybody wants to go back in.
Well, I'm not disagreeing with him. I think if that were to happen, there should be a referendum, but I suspect there'll be quite a lot of people that argue the opposite.
Well, if Labour puts it in their manifesto, it puts people in a very awkward situation. I mean, I definitely would never vote Labour, and especially if they put it in their manifesto, and I would have to start campaigning again. And I would rather not spend all the time. I mean, it nearly ripped the country in two last time. If we're going back into the common market situation we went into when I was at school, and they recommended we went into that, that's a different ball game. But this political union that Major took us into, I think, is a complete disaster. And I think there's no way we should go in through the back door, to be honest.
Well, I don't disagree with you at all, but there'll be many people who say, look, 2016 was 2016. I don't know how many people die on average in a given year in this country, but there will have been several million people who now wouldn't be able to vote because they're no longer with us, and they will have been replaced by a younger generation. If you remember, that was the rather insensitive argument that the Remain campaign used during the referendum, which I don't think did them any credit at all. Apparently 600,000 people in this country die every year. So that's 6 million people that will have died since the 2016 referendum. So, I mean, I don't know what the demographics would do to the percentages there. So I think anyone who thinks that Britain would automatically not vote to rejoin, I think we would have to rehearse all of these arguments all over again, which I must admit is not something that it doesn't matter which side of the argument you're on. Do we really want to go through another few years of that?
No, I quite agree with you. And you can do, if we go back in, say, in 3 years' time or 2 years' time, then we can use the same argument in 10 to 13 years' time that people have died and we need to have a revote.
Oh, exactly.
It's a bit like with Scotland. We had a vote on Scotland, so let's leave it like that for at least 50 years or so. You know?
I don't think you can say 50 years. I think you could say a couple of generations. And a generation is normally regarded as 10 to 15 years. So I think 20 to 30 years after a vote, fine, but not 10. Thank you very much indeed, Mark. Let's take a text from Joanne, who says, I definitely agree with streeting, but for fairness, we need a referendum on back in or out. And my background is complicated. I married a family business. Interesting. And always voted Conservative. Then, sometime after marriage, went to Labour. So, yeah, OK, well, I don't think that this is a party political thing, actually. I mean, Brexit was not party political. Even 25% of Lib Dem voters voted to leave, even though the official Lib Dem position was very much in favour of staying in. Kev says, are we missing something regarding the people who voted for Brexit in Manchester? Do they believe it's the right decision today? Well, if this by-election becomes all about Brexit, which clearly Reform UK may well try and make it like that, well, we will soon find out, won't we? Sergio has been back in touch. He says, blame ChatGPT for my mistake on Britain being the 6th largest economy in the world. Yeah, I have to say, the more I use ChatGPT, the more I realise you do have to second guess it. You have to check what it tells you, because often it gets things completely wrong, particularly when you're asking about the year that something happened. Roy says, as a Lib Dem, I would vote Labour tomorrow if they promise to go back into the EU. As for a referendum, none is needed. Parliament is sovereign. Well, you're right, Parliament is sovereign. But generally on constitutional issues, Parliament devolves the issue down to the people, or back up to the people. I don't know which way you would put that. Another one here. This is from Sean, who says, your guest Lucy said the majority of the electorate voted against being in Europe based on the mess that had been made of Brexit. And moreover, considering the Brexit vote was 10 years ago now, how can she be so sure the majority still support this skip fire? Never heard it called that before. I've heard it called a lot of things. Another text here from John, who says, I would definitely vote Labour if Streeting were to become the Prime Minister, given his statement about rejoining the EU and him being more centre-right. Rejoining the EU is an important factor for me, and I blame Farage for forcing a referendum on a weak David Cameron. Boris was just an opportunist who used his Leave campaign to run against Cameron. He would equally have been Remain had Cameron been pro-Leave. Not so sure about that. I mean, Boris Johnson got a lot of criticism, understandably so, because he wrote 2 newspaper articles, one promoting Remain and one promoting Leave. Then after having written them, he decided which way to go. People who've never written a column for a newspaper don't understand that actually happens quite often, where you test your own arguments by writing an article directly against what you yourself think you believe. So there were lots of reasons to have a go at Boris Johnson, but I never really thought that was a very fair one. I think it was probably stupid to have let it be known that he'd done that. Toby in Surrey says, I don't know if I imagined it, but did Andy Burnham sound extra northern in that publicity video of his? I bet he dials it back in Westminster. There is this phenomenon, isn't there, for people using their accents to their own advantage. I mean, why shouldn't they? I think there are quite a lot of MPs that do that. I think last week I quoted Jonathan Hinder, the Pendle MP, who's been in the news quite a lot because he's a Labour MP that's come out virulently against Keir Starmer. And he is very considerably northern in the way that he speaks. I'm not suggesting he's putting it on. But there are some politicians, Lisa Smart for the Liberal Democrats is another one, who uses their accent to their own advantage, because what they're transmitting is sort of, well, I speak in a northern accent, you can trust me because I'm a blunt northerner, I say it like it is. And that is quite a strength, I think, rather than some namby-pamby southern accent, which anyone can have. And there is a reason that call centres are often based in the northwest and the northeast, because people trust those accents. Tomorrow we've got the York MP, Luke Charters, with us tomorrow on Cross Question. And he's another one of the It's very strong Yorkshire accent. I'm not saying I don't like Yorkshire accents, don't get me wrong, but I think they can be used to very good effect in these matters. Right, this is a text from Stephen. I oppose Brexit. However, rejoining at this point is pie in the sky. The EU is unlikely to even entertain accession talks at this point. I don't identify by class, though I suppose others would view me as a middle class person, and I do live in a metropolitan area. Promises of rejoining will not alter my voting intention. I will vote for whatever candidate is best placed to defeat the Reform one, be that candidate Conservative, Green, Labour, Liberal or Independent. Defeating Reform and Faragism is my sole motivation at this point. It is a phenomenon that people do often vote for a negative reason. They vote against something rather than cast a positive vote. But Stephen, I think you're probably right in your point about Brussels, because there was an article I was reading this morning that said that they are now preparing for a Farage government, a Farage-led government in this country. So if they think that that is the most likely result of the election, they're not going to go into any sort of accession talks with Labour, are they? Right, I'm sure this subject will come up in Cross Question, which is coming up in precisely 2.5 minutes' time. We will be joined in the studio by the journalist and broadcaster Paul Mason. He's a columnist for the New World newspaper. Dr. Luke Evans will be here, Conservative Shadow Health Minister and MP for Hinckley and Bosworth, former GP. Rachel Maskell is Labour MP for York Central, one of the main critics of Keir Starmer. And Lauren McEvert is a former political advisor, and she's the co-presenter of the podcast The Welsh Politics Pod. If you'd like to put a question to our panel, the number to call is 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp on that number, you can text 84850, and of course you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Sir Keir Starmer insists he won't set a timetable to leave number 10, saying he wants to lead his party into the next election. Andy Burnham, seen as a potential challenger, has vowed to change Labour if he succeeds in returning to Parliament. Earlier, he said reopening the Brexit question will cause more division, following calls by potential rival Wes Streeting for the UK to rejoin the EU. Lucy Harris is a former Brexit Party and Conservative MEP. She told Iain Dale she hopes reform will make the EU a big issue for Mr Burnham in that Makerfield by-election.
When you're a politician who I think puts your name behind remaining within the European Union and then wanting to continue to remain in the European Union, when the majority of your electorate has voted out, I think that should be highlighted. It shows a complete difference of opinion and it doesn't align with his local community's values.
Mr Burnham said last autumn that he wanted the UK to rejoin the EU in his lifetime. Efforts to recover the bodies of 4 Italian scuba divers who went missing last week are due to begin tomorrow. They were located earlier following days of searching underwater caves in the Maldives. Parents could soon be punished for their children's crimes as part of reforms to the youth justice system. Judges in England and Wales could give out fines and even jail time in extreme cases. Stephen Akinsanya is a criminal barrister and CEO of Life of Focus, a youth mentoring organisation. He told LBC parents need to take more responsibility.
By the time they get to 10, they're already forming their own opinions on things, their own relationships. They're already learning that no is not something that is used in the home. And then you've lost control already. And that's why I'm an advocate of youngsters under the age of 10 being educated about things such as knife crime.
And Channel 4 has removed all previous seasons of Married at First Sight UK from its streaming platforms. The broadcaster says it follows very serious allegations of wrongdoing against a small number of past contributors. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 128 points at 10,323. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather: rain sweeping into the northeast and turning windy tonight. Showers in the southwest and Northern Ireland by dawn, lows of 3. Staying windy tomorrow, rain clearing to sunny spells and scattered showers. Some of these will be heavy and thundery, highs of 19 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening and welcome to Monday's Cross Question. It's 3 minutes past 8. Let me tell you who's on the panel tonight. To my left, Lauren McEvatt, former Conservative political advisor. She is the co-presenter of the podcast The Welsh Politics Pod. Next to her is Dr. Luke Evans. He's Conservative Shadow Health Minister and MP for Hinckley and Bosworth, former GP. To my right, Rachel Maskell, Labour MP for York Central. Much in evidence on the media in the past, well, in fact, for quite a long time, actually, Rachel, isn't it? And Paul Mason, ever present on our media, journalist and broadcaster. He's a columnist for the New World newspaper and was born, guess where? In Makerfield. I'm sure that might come up in the course of the next hour on LBC. If you'd like to ask them a question, you know the drill, 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp on that number. And of course, you can watch our proceedings on Global Player, on the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
It is incredible, the guests that we book, when we often book. I mean, I don't know how long ago you were booked for this, Paul, but it must have been quite some. It's usually a few weeks, and oh, it was Friday apparently. Corey tells me, and they've got some connection to what's happening in the news. So obviously, we'll hear from you a little bit about Makerfield in a moment. But let's go to our first question. It's from Max in Marylebone. Hello, Max.
Hi, and thanks for taking my call, and hello, panel. My question is now that the EU genie is properly out the bottle, because when Starmer was first elected, he sort of said, the EU debate's been had, but he's started shifting. Wes Streeting has said we need to rejoin the EU. Andy Burnham is very strong on Europe, and so on. Is there a possibility that I think that the next general election will have a big element of actually this being a proxy vote on Europe in the next general election, and therefore we won't really we can actually do away with the whole need of a proper Brexit referendum once again, seeing as it'll be a proxy in the next general election.
Well, Paul, let's come to you first on this. I mean, it's quite incredible that 8 words at the end of Wes Streeting's speech has sparked this whole debate over the last few days.
Yes, and I think that's what it was intended to do. But for me, Max asks, will the next election be about rejoining Europe? I hope it isn't. I am a Remainer. I think this country will probably one day rejoin something that is a European Union. It might be a European security union, including Ukraine. But I think what's changed since the referendum is that the system of globalization that we thought was more or less permanent is breaking up. The world is breaking up into rival competing power blocks. America is not really interested in Europe anymore. Russia is quite interested in Europe. And I think our future, our destiny, by virtue of the common culture and the geography, have to get a lot closer to Europe, both economically and on the security agenda. So I think that's where I don't blame Wes Streeting for saying eventually I want to join. Andy Burnham said no. The government line is red lines. We're not joining anything. I think that's not sustainable. I'd like to see us open serious negotiations about joining the customs union. I don't think that would in any way betray Brexit, because Brexit didn't tell us not to be in the customs union. It just told us not to be in the European Union.
But all of the trade deals that have been negotiated since then, they would go, wouldn't they?
They have to be renegotiated. You can renegotiate a trade deal. Imagine getting inside...
But we wouldn't have the power to do that. It would be the European Union that would be doing that.
But getting inside the customs union, getting inside the single market would add 4 percentage points to the projected GDP growth of this country overnight.
Would it really?
I think it would. I think the OBR would buy that. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Am I possibly the only one on this panel who's actually attended a World Trade Conference?
because I attended the 2015 one when I was working for the Kenyan government, which was hosted in Nairobi, and I rebuilt their trade agency. I was working extensively within their trade department, and we did nothing at that because we were represented by the EU. The French and the German delegates who still attended worked out they'd been at the College of Europe together and dispatched the deputy ambassador from France to UN commissary to find a bottle of Burgundy they could share together because they had sod all to do. We cannot represent our interests at that body, and the problem that we've got is we're an incredibly service-based economy, and we need to buy goods. So we need to trade services for goods. And there was never a single market in services. We were never being accurately or adequately represented on the global stage in services. And it meant that our relations with the Commonwealth couldn't be executed properly for buying goods and selling services.
Rather get involved in an argument for or against Brexit, let's stick to the question. Do you think that there is a possibility that the next election will be effectively a quasi-referendum?
I think every election we've had since 2016 has in some way or another been a quasi-representation of the 2016 vote. But what we haven't had is anything like the turnout at any subsequent election that we had for that referendum. And that means that there's an enormous chunk of people in this country who are just switched off from the general elections. And so one cannot match the other in being rerun, in my opinion.
Luke?
Well, I guess the Lib Dems will always want to push rejoin. That's one of the things. So they will try and make this.
But they haven't got the
party.
courage to say it.
No, well, they did say bollocks to Brexit, didn't they? Can I say that on this show, on their manifesto?
That's two swear words in the first 8 minutes, so we're doing well. Rachel, it's your turn next.
So it will be part, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the economy and what the future looks like. And I think the Conservatives can set out an agenda where we are saying exactly we need those trade deals. We need to be looking across the world for what Paul has just said, but because the dynamics are shifting, and I'd like to be flight of foot to be able to do so. And I think we're better served outside the EU, but as an ally. You know, they are an ally. We do need to make sure we've got that strong cooperation, but just not them setting the rules.
Rachel?
Well, the EU could well change again, of course, and we've lost £120 billion as a result of not being part of that trade agreement. So I think it's really important that we look at what's in the economic interests of our country, but to rejoin when we've got so many crises at home suggests that we're not really reading the room. And I think we've got to look at what's happening on our doorsteps at this time, and the challenges that people have got in their lives doesn't suggest that this is the community's priority. And therefore, I think we've absolutely got to bed in to issues like housing, energy, and of course the kind of the future crisis within our economy. We've got a society which is becoming ever more dystopian. It's an ageing society. We obviously know that the value of work is really hitting the wage packet hard. And as a result of that, I think we really need to draw into those priorities before jumping into a different relationship with Europe. First of all, we can't just walk back in because the Tory government stormed out and there are bridges to build. And I think that's really...
I was going to say the British government.
Well, with the arrangement and the way that they did it, it was the Tory government who stormed out. The British people made a determination, but it wasn't them in charge of that process. And I think as a result of that, we need to start with building some bridges to have mature conversations, whether it's about alliances around our defence or whether it is around wider alliances around our borders. I think that's really important. And then we can move forward to look at how our trading across Europe and the rest of the world. And why not be one of those leaders in Europe, as we were back when the last Labour government was in power?
But Iain, Paul's right when he set this off. Wes threw this dead cow out there immediately because he knows one.
Do you think he meant to?
Yeah, I genuinely do.
Deliberately.
I don't think Wes has done anything in the last 20 years that hasn't been about getting him into number 10.
So, he set this
I know
up.
at university. So.
He knew one of his challenges is going to be standing in a Brexit area, and this was a nice, easy way to say, I'll give you an opening. We want a wide field, but also I'm going to, stab you as we go through. It effectively is quite literally the red wedding happening right in front of us. The king in the north coming in, and then there's going to be this almighty bloodbath in Makerfield, and we'll have to see what the pieces are picked up afterwards. And unfortunately, the country is going to suffer in the meantime.
Let's take a follow-up question from Richard in Brentford. Hello, Richard. Are you there? He doesn't seem to be there, which is a bit annoying. So I'll say what he was going to say, because I've got it written on my screen here. Is it not an indictment that the Labour Party cannot find a leader from their 403 MPs? And how will Burnham win back those that left for reform where Starmer hasn't? Rachel?
Well, first of all, the Labour Party is a movement. We are made up of components of our trade unions, our councillors, socialist societies, our mayors, and parliamentarians. So as a movement, our interest is in having the best leader possible to take our country forward. And
but the rules say it has to be an MP.
Well, and that's why we're seeing the process we're seeing at the moment, because in order to bring that person into Parliament, then it's really important that they have that ability and that pathway to do so. I appreciate it's not conventional, but ultimately, when I see the unity which has been built across Manchester, when I see the way that the economy is growing faster there than anywhere else in the country, our transport system being integrated, our public services driving forward, I want to see that in my constituency, and I think we want to see that across the country. So to bring in the talent to be able to deliver that is absolutely the right decision. Ultimately, this is going to be a decision for the people of Makerfield. They know what is in their best interests, and they will be making their voices heard. And I think the key thing about the way that Andy works, and I've known him for a very long time, is that he does engage with people and bring forward other people's voices into the centre. And I think this isn't just about what is happening in this part of the country. I think it's about upending our whole political system, because it isn't working for anybody at the moment.
Do you not think there is a danger, though, that the people of Makerfield may feel taken for granted, that there's a sort of almost a sense of entitlement that King Andy can walk in and just use the constituency to further his own ambitions?
Not at all. And I think,
it'll cost a lot of money. I mean, this by-election will cost £120,000 of taxpayers' money. Then there would be the £5 million cost of a by-election in Manchester. I mean, that's quite difficult to defend, isn't it?
Well, I think what we want to do is something which is in the interests of the whole country, bring our communities together. We can't continue, as we've seen over the last government and now in the first 2 years of Labour, our country dividing. We've got to bring that unity, because that is destabilising all of our politics.
Paul? Well, I think I don't want to see a Labour leadership election anytime soon. If possible, not in this Parliament. That doesn't mean a change of leader is impossible, because we could end up with one scenario that's been floated by the unions is that we get to Labour conference, we get a rule change, so it puts it back in the hands of a tighter knit group of people. Because what I fear, and it's something that I
like who.
We used to have an electoral college, so there used to be the unions, the MPs, and some members. The reason is because what I fear is a repeat of what happened with the Conservatives. As a bystander to the Truss and the Truss victory in that internal leadership election, one felt that the future of the country was being determined by 200,000 people. It felt very, very alienating and undemocratic, although it was within the rules of the Tory party and within the rules of Parliament. And I don't want to see the Labour Party voluntarily go into a position where however many, we've got 300,000 people, dominate 6 weeks' worth of political discussion to the exclusion of everybody else. And indeed, I still support Keir Starmer. I think Keir Starmer should carry on, do his job, do what he was elected to do it better, communicate better. And if Andy Burnham gets into Parliament, which I think he will, I think he should take his time, go to the tea room, meet some MPs, have some briefings under Privy Council. I can't remember, he was a Privy Councillor. Have a Privy Council briefing about what's really happening in Ukraine, what's really happening with Islamist terror on the streets of Golders Green, and then decide what his pitch to the country is. And you've seen today he's had to row back on one of his most fundamental beliefs, which is, I share it. I think the fiscal rules should change. He's now having to say they shouldn't. Get inside, work.
But this is Burnham all over, isn't it?
Yep.
I mean, say what you think needs to be said to get power.
No, no, that's not true. I think he is a principled politician, and those are.
Do you know he's the only politician to have privatised a hospital?
I didn't know that.
Yep. Well, there you go.
But let me see. I think he should be in Parliament. I'd like to see him in the cabinet. I think I would just like him to see him. What I don't think you can do is have this sort of bonanza of internal Labour politics, followed by somebody walks on more or less off the street into the PLP and into cabinet. It's not, the British system doesn't work that way.
Well, will he be walking on water to do that?
On behalf of the team who went through this bonanza a couple of times, at least we did it quite rapidly, if we're being fair. This has dragged on and on and on for about 2 weeks now, and Keir Starmer still hasn't actually resigned. There isn't actually a vacancy.
And I don't think he will.
And I really don't think that at this point there's going to be. We don't have a presidential system in this country. We elect members of parliament. They form the largest party. They select a leader. And I think
it's amazing the number of people that don't understand that.
I know, but I think that's a much healthier than this sort of drive towards the presidential style. And the mayoralties give us a quasi-presidential style locally, which I think is quite unhealthy for how the country works. And we saw it with Boris, and I think that Andy's going to be like Boris, where he was able to run Manchester and he's not able to run the country. And I think that we can look at his ministerial track record and see mid-staffs and see maternity scandals and say that this is going to be bad.
Luke.
Well, Rachel did a valiant effort saying he's the man for the job, but you've got to remember he's already run twice and lost to Ed Miliband, who's still in there, and Jeremy Corbyn as well. So I think we've already seen the track record of how difficult Andy finds it to get elected. But this really is a Labour problem at the moment, because imagine on the doorstep what's going to happen. You're going to have a guy trying to come in as a candidate to stand to take out the leader that's campaigning for the Prime Minister, with a Prime Minister who's coming in, if I'm right, into their constituency to say campaign for the guy who's going to usurp me, with Reform saying, well, we're going to campaign to stop a Labour MP to have keep Keir Starmer in place. I mean, I think I've got that right. It's a crazy situation, all at the time when there's so much going on both in the country and the world. I think we need some real focus on what's happening, and all of this could all happen, and Keir Starmer there might not even be a challenge, because Wes didn't put up and have a challenge. So we don't even know where we're going to be at the moment. So there could be a very odd situation where Andy does lose, then he has the mayoralty, and we still have Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. I don't know, and this is the problem. I don't think anyone does.
I don't know what programme this person's listening to, but they say this is a right leavers loving, isn't it? Well, you said you're a Remainer.
I am a Remainer.
Rachel's a Remainer. Lauren?
I voted to leave.
You voted to leave, and so that's 2-2.
In my defence, I thought we'd lose.
Corey says it's 3-2 because I'm fairly outspoken on this subject. Now, we have some Trumpy news. He's just posted on his own Truth Social site to say the leaders of Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have asked him to hold off on our planned military attack on the Islamic Republic of Iran, which was scheduled for tomorrow, in that serious negotiations are now taking place, and that in their opinion, as great leaders and allies, a deal will be made which will be very acceptable to the United States of America, as well as all countries in the Middle East and beyond. This deal will include, importantly, no nuclear weapons for Iran, in capital letters. Based on my respect for the above-mentioned leaders, I have instructed Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Daniel Kaine, and the United States military, that we will not be doing the scheduled attack on Iran tomorrow, but have further instructed them to be prepared to go forward with a full large-scale assault of Iran on a moment's notice in the event that an acceptable deal is not reached. Taco, 8:20.
This is LBC.
Have you ever felt like your investment advisor is giving you an off-the-shelf retirement plan? That they just want to put you in a box? But who wants that? At Fisher Investments UK, we never put you in a box. We create a plan that's just right for you, because it's only right for us if it's right for you. Fisher Investments UK. Retirement advice that's as individual as you are. Learn more at fisherinvestments.co.uk. Investing involves the risk of loss. Fisher Investments UK is regulated by the UK Financial Conduct Authority.
Oh, bad traffic. Great news, isn't it? More time in the car. Joy. Maybe you don't feel it. Maybe you don't drive a Lexus NX yet. But when you do, you'll see the positive of peak hour, the delight in a detour, the love of the long way. The Lexus NX plug-in hybrid. Experience amazing before you arrive.
Diary, what time's my Specsavers eye test?
Hi, Miriam. It's in 15 minutes. Would you like directions? Great. Exit the bedroom, past the dog's basket, sit at the kitchen table. You have arrived. Enough time to move pickles. Visitors do make him frisky.
Some people can't get to Specsavers unaccompanied. That's why we offer home visits. Home visits from
Miriam's Journey.
Savers.
Down pickles,
Geographical restrictions apply. Find out if you're eligible online.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
22 minutes past 8. Journalist Paul Mason is here, Conservative MP Dr Luke Evans, Labour MP Rachel Maskell and Lauren McKevitt. She co-hosts the podcast The Welsh Politics Pod. Right, WhatsApp question here from Martin. If Andy Burnham wins the by-election, is Reform finished? If he loses, is Labour finished? Things are never quite that binary, are they, Lauren McKevitt?
No, they're really not. And I think that as long as Nigel Farage has breath in his body, reform is still going to be a feature of British politics. And he's also the principal reason I'm still a member of the Conservative Party.
Oh, it's a bit of a negative reason to still be a member of the Conservative Party.
No, there's many other reasons, but that one's a big one.
OK, Paul Mason.
No and no. But I think Andy Burnham stands a good chance of winning Makerfield. As you pointed out earlier, I am from Lee, which is next door, and I was born there. My mum ran a primary school in Hindley Green, which is part of Makerfield. Makerfield's half of Wigan. It's the southern half of Wigan, and it's got leafy suburbs. It's got an excellent sixth form college. It's got nearby one of the highest tech defence companies, MBDA, in Britain. But it's got some deep pockets of poverty. And when I say poverty, ex-mining villages, Abram, Bickershaw, Ince, that...
we don't think of that area as mining. I mean, in the south, I was quite surprised when I found out that it was a mining area.
Well, a long time ago, I mean, there was a famous pit disaster, the Maypole Colliery disaster. This lives in living memory. When you look on electoral calculus... Makerfield is one of those places, they say, are they citizens of nowhere or citizens of somewhere? There's one of these categories, and they're definitely somewheres, as are Wiganers in general, and people from Lee, which is the next door town where I come from. No, so there's a somewhereness, there's a feeling of some... And the point is about Andy, he's lived close by or there for quite a long time. He's represented the nearby constituency. Everybody knows him. He can, unlike other politicians... walk the streets and have an argument with people in a friendly way, even with people as extreme reform people who are quite angry.
He's a very personable guy, isn't he?
Yeah, and I think we need people like that in politics, and I think that's why he'll probably win. It doesn't mean the end of reform. It doesn't mean the end of all the things that people are rightly concerned about. And it does not mean in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer can be complacent about the reasons people deserted our party on the 7th of May, both to the left and to the right. I just think I'd say to people, don't read too much into it. It's an ordinary British town with very decent people, had a hard time after the deindustrialisation, and yet it is a place that I think people will just fairly judge any candidate who turns up.
Luke Evans.
No and no. There's a lot to play for. By-elections are funny things. If you think back a few years ago with Hartlepool by-election, you could have been saying the same thing the other way around, and look where it's all gone in circles. So no and no is the honest answer for me. There's all to play for as we campaign going forward.
I suspect Rachel may agree.
I do agree, but I do think it's an incredible platform to really plug into what people are saying in that Wigan area, but also across the country, really understand post the 7th of May what those real challenges are that are causing people to go to the ballot box and put their cross in the box, and to bring that determination together. And that's why I do believe it's the opportunity to flip our politics and to key into what those real deep concerns are, and then to come to Westminster as the learning place of how we do our politics in a very different way. We can't continue with this authoritarian centralist approach. We have got to see diversity. We have got to see greater devolution, pushing out power.
And that's why a white man is the answer to your problem.
And we've got to, we don't determine what our personal characteristics are.
You've never had a woman in charge.
But what I do think is really important is that we plug in to the people. And that's what I do in my city. And sometimes it clashes with the Labour Party. But ultimately, I know that we can bring real unity in a place like York. Sunday, we had thousands of people gather together in the happiest of spaces in the middle of our city. I don't think you see that anywhere else. But because we are unifying our place, and I think that's what Andy will do in Makerfield.
I travelled through your city at lunchtime today.
Lucky you.
Right, David is in Bayswater. Hello, David.
Oh, yeah, hi, Ian. I just wanted to ask panel something, but just I'll preface my question by saying my dad, we're from Guyana originally, and my dad was from a working class family there, and he came all the way to England and qualified as a doctor, so it was a real struggle. So I was wondering, why is it that British politicians make such a fuss about being working class? Why do they use it as a badge of honour when people in other countries, they don't seem to make such a thing of it? I just don't get it. Sorry, I hope it's not offensive.
Luke, I mean, you're a GP, so obviously middle class. I mean, he's got a point, hasn't it? It's sort of, it's if you're working class, it's seen as an extra qualification almost for politics nowadays. It never used to be like that.
Well, very much so that we have this class-based system historically going through the British culture. Actually, I'm much more interested in where you come from, where you're going. More importantly, it's not where you come from, it's where you're going. That's what conservatism is all about, giving you the opportunity to get on as far as you can with the merit that brings you there. And I think that's what you're seeing for Kemi, who exemplifies that, takes that forward, is speaking about that all the time, about the vision that she has for the nation, saying, come on, let's get on, let's get up and make a difference. And that's what you see. Having been a GP dealing with all sorts of people from all sorts of communities, when I lived in Birmingham and when I worked in Oxford, I want to see where they want to go and help them as best I can. Swap that into politics. That's what the Conservatives are trying to do now.
Rachel.
Well, I would say that's very much the Labour aspiration as well, because what we want to ensure is that people have got a pathway and can see their future. But when it comes to identity, people are very proud of the industrial past that they had as well, because it brought communities together. And I think that's what people are crying out for. We've seen a real fragmentation of labour, for instance, over the last 14 years. We've seen the gig economy on the rise, where people have been really exploited. And they look back to that industrial past where there was unity. They belonged to the union, the chapel, the brass band, and so much more in their community.
But the point that David's making is, I mean, Keir Starmer is obviously middle class, being a sort of barrister. I mean, clearly, but he comes from a working class background, and in every speech that he makes about trying to put forward his own vision, he'll mention that as a badge of honour, won't he? Which I'm not sure. I mean, do Conservative politicians do that as much? I don't know.
Not really.
I don't know any toolmakers' sons.
Well, I see it in my community in the way that people refer back to the industries they worked in. So in York, the chocolate industry or the rail industry, and people are incredibly proud of what our city produced, the wealth it brought, the opportunities it gave. And I think that's the connectivity that people are looking for as part of their wider identity.
Paul? My fear is that this constant harking back to being working class betrays the fear that it might all be over. I mean, my family tree goes hat maker, miner, economics editor at the BBC, and nobody in Wigan or Lee has any problem with that. Because they see that as the achievement of people who are socialists, people who are left-wing, see that as the achievement of the post-war Labour governments. The only reason that happened to me, post-war Labour government. But if you look today, if you look at the poorest areas of places like Wigan, the fear is that path is no longer open to people because education isn't good enough. There's too much atomisation. There's too much child poverty.
And the BBC doesn't have an economics editor of Newsnight anymore.
But do you know what I mean? What I'm in politics to do, I'm a political activist as well as a journalist, is to keep that pathway open. And so, I don't. To the caller, I'd say, because we were such a class stratified society where social mobility wasn't that possible for a lot of people from my background, the fact that we once achieved it means we're quite proud of it, and I think that's possibly what people are talking about.
Lauren?
I think class is one of those fascinating British constructs, and I say this to someone, both my parents are immigrants. My father's Irish, my mother's American, and so I come from a very, very mixed background. I was raised overseas in Hong Kong predominantly, and as an observer to British class, and in fact English class, this is a fascinating subject.
It's there in Scotland as well.
It is, but it's different. It feels different slightly. English class is slightly different to Welsh class, is slightly different to Scottish class. And what I find fascinating about this is if you work now and your life chances are diminishing, and your ability to get on in the way your parents did is diminished, what class are you? If you came from middle class, but you can't hope to make what your parents did, and you're having the Jesus taxed out of you, and you can't get on the housing ladder, and you join something like the YIMBY Alliance, which I'm a profoundly online person, so I witnessed this particular bun fight today. One of your Labour colleagues today quote tweeted the YIMBY Alliance, who were talking about social housing and working versus non-working within social housing in Zone 1 and 2 in London. And he said the YIMBY Alliance are just graduates in graduate jobs and they shouldn't be listened to. And it's like, well, those graduates in graduate jobs can't get homes anywhere near where they need to work. And they're providing the bulk of the tax system at the moment, which is not covering the welfare bill anymore. What is working class now? Because if those workers are not feeling represented by people claiming to be working class, who is going to represent them? Who are they going to vote for? Because that's the answer very clearly isn't, to say, well, just because your parents were something that you're automatically that. And I think that's why I have such a problem with the idea that we could have class be a protected characteristic, because it presumes you can't move. It bakes in a lack of social mobility rather than sort of encouraging social mobility. Okay, absolutely, but it's a genuine
Paul is a living example of this, aren't you?
Absolutely.
One of many.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying you're unique, but I mean, it'd be ridiculous to make it protected in that way.
But there is a campaign for it.
Well, I have to say, I haven't heard of that campaign. It's one that does not deserve to win. Right, it's 8:32. Let's get the news headlines on LBC with Katie Dartford.
Sir Keir Starmer insists he won't set a timetable to leave Number 10, saying he wants to lead his party into the next election. Andy Burnham, seen as a potential challenger, has vowed to change Labour if he succeeds in returning to Parliament. Donald Trump's revealed he was planning to restart the war with Iran tomorrow, but he's posted online saying he's accepted a request from several Middle East leaders to hold off the attacks because serious negotiations are taking place. The US president says he's been told a deal will be made, which will include no nuclear weapons for Tehran. And Channel 4 has removed all previous seasons of Married at First Sight UK from its streaming platforms. The broadcaster says it follows serious allegations of wrongdoing made against a small number of past contributors. LBC weather: rain sweeping into the northeast and turning windy tonight. Showers in the southwest and Northern Ireland by dawn. Lows of 3.
This is LBC.
At the third stroke, the time from BT will be 6 o'clock precisely.
Today in the UK, 100,000 people will call 999. 3,000 will say fire service. 465 will say, I think she's gone into labour. And 1 will say, the cat is stuck up a tree again. And every second, a BT employee will answer and connect those calls to the emergency services.
At the third stroke, the time from BT will be brilliant.
BT, behind brilliant things.
There's one green bottle sat on my fridge shelf. This green and white bottle that supports my gut health. Beautiful by nature, beautiful by name. It's the tastiest way to up my gut health game.
Beautiful gut health. Switch your yogurt to the UK's #1 kefir and give your gut and your summer a lift. Kefir is a source of calcium which contributes to the normal function of digestive enzymes. For verification of UK's #1 kefir, see beautifulguthealth.com/radio.
A spectacle far beyond your imagination. Be amazed. Be moved. Be there. For an experience that will stay with you forever. Disney's The Lion King at London's Lyceum Theatre. Book now at thelionking.co.uk.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
8:35 on LBC. Lauren McKevitt is here, the co-host of the podcast, The Welsh Politics Pod, and you want to clear up something about your schooling, Lauren.
Yes, you had someone write in and to ask if I went to the South Island School in Hong Kong, and in fact I went to German Swiss, which I went to school in German for the first 5 years. No, well, it was German, so I was going to school in German.
Paul Mason is here, who's got a new book out. Not quite yet, but imminent.
Order it. Read,
What's it called, Paul?
read A Global History of Communism. It is the history of communism over the last 250 years.
Does that indicate that communism is history?
No.
From your lips to God's ears.
The most successful political party in the world is the Chinese Communist Party. The most successful economy in the world is China. And I'm very pessimistic.
And slavery is just by the by.
No. I'm very pessimistic that there are now people running around the streets of London who think this is a great thing.
Yeah.
And I, as a socialist, I've been to China 6 times, seen how terrible and totalitarian it is. Part of the reason for writing this book is I want to educate a new generation of people that this is not the way.
I mean, that's a pretty ambitious project to write a whole history of communism, isn't it? I mean,
it's
did you not find it really daunting?
It doesn't work, is
painful the amount of things I've had to cut out, Ian. But it's pretty comprehensive. If you read it, you'll know what happened. And I think we do. Look, we're surrounded, thankfully, by memories and reminders of the Holocaust. You can stumble over one of these brass stones in Europe where someone who's a victim is commemorated. In Russia, all that's gone. It's been torn down, if it ever existed.
Well, in the autumn, I'm going to have you, assuming you want to do it, on my All Talk podcast so we can talk about it for as long as we like.
Yeah.
Rachel Maskell is here. You haven't got a book coming out at all?
Not, no.
One day. I think your memoirs would be quite interesting to read, given your role over the last
There are
few
things
years.
that I want to put to paper, let's put it that way.
And Luke Evans is here, Conservative Shadow Health Minister. And what do you think of the new appointment? Because we had a bit of a moment on Cross Question last week. I don't know if you saw the clip because it sort of went viral.
I was listening to it when
you were listening.
I was driving in the car.
Barry Gardner. James Murray's appointment was announced, and Barry Gardner was sitting where you're sitting, Paul. And I said, "So, what's your reaction, Barry Gardner, to James Murray's appointment?" And I don't think he actually knew who James Murray was. And it turns out now that Angela Rayner was offered the job, but turned it down.
Apparently she's back on the cigarettes, that's why.
No, I think there are other reasons for that. But I think it's quite interesting that Keir Starmer didn't ask her himself, which I think goes back to your point, Rachel. You've been very critical of him because he doesn't do the politics well. You don't get a member of staff to offer a cabinet position to Angela Rayner, do you?
You would reach out, wouldn't you? Especially at this time, this particular time where the accusation is
because it's quite difficult for somebody to say no to a Prime Minister rather than some member of staff. Anyway, let's go to another question. Wesley and Gravesend. There were some ladies who were dressed in the burqa at the Tommy Robinson organised Unite the Kingdom march on Saturday. Why is this not Islamophobia? What would we call it if dancers on stage who were dressed in Jewish clothing started ripping it off in front of everyone? I suppose it's possible they might have been Muslims.
They weren't. They weren't. They were French women who were, beneath their burqas, were dressed in a very modern, one might call, not sort of trendy, fashionable way. And I found it utterly offensive. I forced as someone who writes about the far right as well as the extreme left, I forced myself to watch quite a lot of that. And it was excruciating because what it was saying, there's a very, very small minority of Muslim women who wear the burqa in Britain. It was just, they wore them and then they took them off and revealed their bodies. And that was just saying your religion it's otherizing an entire religion. And the crowd lapped it up. And it wasn't the only thing. There were calumnies and libels against British Muslim men all the way through that rally. I pity the police personnel who had to deal with it, many of whom were also abused. Some Muslim police men and women were abused by British so-called patriots.
Rachel?
Well, I mean, it's utterly appalling, that behaviour, and, I do hope convictions are brought in the appropriate way, but without the dignity...
What law have they broken?
Well, obviously there were 14,000 police there looking at maintaining law and order.
No, there really weren't 14,000.
Well, that was the...
I think there were 4,000 policing that and the pro-Palestine rally.
But I think ultimately this is looking at issues of Islamophobia and, of course, if there's Jewish hatred and the anti-Semitism as well. And I think we've got an issue. If there isn't dignity and respect and understanding, we've got to go right back into understanding why we're seeing the escalation of what I would determine as particulate, focused on
particular characteristics of individuals, their religion and belief. And we have gone desperately wrong when we can stand on a public platform.
To play devil's advocate,
that.
why should any religion be beyond criticism or satire? Because say that this new satirical program on Sky, Saturday Night Live, if they had done a skit on that, we'd all think it was funny.
Would we?
Well, I think most people probably would.
Why?
Because it's on a comedy program, and so they would have done it in a way.
But why
do
we laugh at individuals because of the God they believe in,
because
or the way that they worship? Is that right?
Well, Monty Python
found
it to be so. Monty Python went about with the church over their right to be able to offend the church. You don't have a right in this country to not be offended. You have a right to not have crimes committed against you, but you don't have a right to not be offended.
But it's more
and part
than
of
that.
coming to this country is accepting that is a big strain of the culture within it. Now, were these women offensive? Of course they were. They were absolutely appalling. But the 60,000 people who were on this march, in my opinion, were all fairly offensive. And thank God it was 50% of the people who were on it the year before. So clearly things are trending in the right direction. 43 people were arrested across both protests that happened in London over the course of that day. That's the right thing. We had 4,000 police on the streets. It will have been a tough day for them, but they did the right thing. You don't have a right to not be offended in this country. And saying that you hope people are arrested for offending someone is such a dark road for us to go down. It is such a dark road for us to go down.
No, it's deeper than that, because you're actually undermining an individual. You're undermining their beliefs. You are pushing people back into their homes, back into the corner, back into the dark, and not being able to have confidence. We're seeing that across our communities now, where people don't leave their homes, don't have the freedoms and the rights on our streets that other people can enjoy. So it's absolutely right that we call this to account, and we don't say that is permissible within our kind of society.
Luke?
Well, here what you're seeing play out is exactly the battle of ideas. In a free society, we should have free speech and be able to freely offend. But then, as a free society, we also have to draw the line somewhere on intimidation and what is a threat and what is safe. And that is the balance where the police have to come in, and I'd like to commend them for the work that they do, because it's bloody tough. But when you look at what we're seeing across society, we had Celtic fans running onto Aberdeen, we've seen the 2 marches, we've had the Notting Hill Carnival. These are all individual things and events that need an approach to look at them and make a judgment call. What I want to live in a world is you could substitute one of those words out and put in another one. They're treated in the same way until something changes immediately. I think that's really, really important. What we're tending to see, though, is unfortunately an escalation and this scaling up of the behaviour, so that if you are Jewish walking down the street, you feel very scared. If you're Muslim, you're feeling very scared. If you're an Aberdeen fan, you're feeling very scared. How do we try and pull that back with allowing society to be free and make their statement? That also comes with a little bit of personal responsibility, I would argue, about your ability to choose to offend someone, but the ability of choosing not to do so.
But I do think it is emboldening people, and the more that they witness, the more freedom that they feel. I look at what happened in my city, which is a very progressive human rights city. Last summer, people felt so emboldened that they were starting to shout race hate at some people in my community, and then people felt even more emboldened, so they beat up people in my city. So I think we have got to be able to nip this in the bud at the source wherever we see it, so that we do create a society where people have got the freedoms to walk
and to live in their community. To cut both ways, because there are people in this country refusing to accept British values, who are expecting exceptionalism for them without understanding that it is not a British value to mistreat women. It is not a British value to lock your wife away. It is not a British value to prevent your children from being educated. And there has to be a goose for the gander thing here.
But it's not British value to speak hate or to beat somebody up either, or to undermine somebody's religion or belief.
I think there's a different point there, and those people should feel the full force of the law, and that's we're all equal on the the rule of law in this country. It doesn't matter what religion you have, what political base you have, and that should apply equally everywhere on this basis, and that's how you solve the problem. It's Martin Luther King-esque.
What I fear that's happening on both those marches on Saturday is that what they're turning to is regular expressions of identity. That's what it is. It's I'm me, up yours. I won't say the word, but F off to the rest of you. And that's what that's what that burqa thing was about. It was people on the other side are finding very clever ways of going very close to the bone in terms of incitement and hate speech. The Kebaro Yahud, which is a chant I've heard again and again on those Palestinian marches, overtly racist chant. Honour our martyrs. What does that mean? What does honour our martyrs mean? Because in Gaza, where I've reported from, martyr means a mujahideen fighter who's died. That doesn't mean anything else. So what I appeal to decent people on the right of politics, decent people on the far left, and in the Muslim community, is don't get sucked in to winding the other section of society up. It only leads in one direction.
Right, we've got more questions to come. If you want to put a question to our panel, 0345 6060 973. It's 8:46.
This is LBC.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Oh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Tackles the crunch and theatrical diving, rivals on terraces sobbing and crying, last minute winners that change everything. These are a few of our favourite things. When you're singing, yet not winning, when your bet's gone bad. We simply remember our favourite things, and then we'll feel so glad.
For all your favourite things, visit BetVictor. 18+, gambleaware.org. Please gamble responsibly.
The Meal Deal Plus is now on the McDonald's Saver menu and comes with a choice of one of 5 bonus sides. Bag of mayo, chicken or cheeseburger with medium fries, a selected drink and a bonus side, all for $5.59. We're talking a mini McFlurry, apple pie, 4 nuggets or even another mayo, chicken or cheeseburger on the side. Now that's Saver satisfaction. From 11 a.m, not on delivery. Includes a selected Saver menu burger, medium fries, selected medium drink and a selected bonus side. Price and participation may vary.
At John Lewis Money, we know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap and the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:48. Luke has admitted to me that he did confuse Aberdeen for Hearts.
Yeah,
there,
apologies.
So let's correct that. So
a hell of a game, though.
It was. I was watching it. 1 or 2 people have pointed that out. Right, we have Luke Evans with us, Paul Mason, Rachel Maskell and Laura McEvitt. Did I say Laura? Lauren. Paul in Birmingham is next. Hello, Paul.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Dow and panel.
Hi.
Is it right that London taxpayers may have to pay £2.5 million to West Ham should they be relegated under the terms of the deal signed by Boris Johnson?
Do you know, I have some very disloyal producers, don't I? In that
they're all nodding.
I mean, honestly.
Well, especially as I am a Spurs supporter.
It gets even worse. Well, I'm going to read out what's on my screen here. I'm hoping that it's something that I can read out. Boris Johnson's successor, Sir Sadiq Khan, has highlighted the terms of West Ham's lease of the London Stadium, which means the rent costs will reduce by around £2.5 million if West Ham are relegated from the Premier League this week. That's actually incorrect. It would go down from 4 million to 2.5 million, right. So it would be 1.5 million less. That was the deal that Karen Brady negotiated with the then Mayor of London, Boris Johnson, and his team. Or was it Tessa Jowell when she was there? I'm not quite sure. But no, it was Boris Johnson. So it was a great deal for West Ham, wasn't it, Paul Mason?
Obviously, yes. But, do I care? No, it's not high on my list of priorities. Maybe we should nationalise the actual stadium.
Is there anything you won't nationalise?
It's already nationalised.
That's what I mean.
We just lease it for 25 matches a season.
Yeah.
In
which case you'd make no money out of it because there'd be no lease.
That's why it's losing money, because it's owned by the state. Rachel?
Well, I want to know who's going to gain from this ultimately. So I guess West Ham are going to have to do their best not to be relegated.
Well, yeah, it's not going so well so far, Luke.
What I was going to say is, Paul's a Spurs fan. Is he prepared to let Spurs go down instead and save the taxpayers' money? There's a question for him. But in seriousness, actually, it's a wider argument about what happens with Olympic stadiums and how you get them off people's hands. Because you look across what happened in Brazil, you look at what happened in Italy. There is a real problem when you're hosting these massive world events. What we do afterwards. Actually, the UK has a pretty good record of making sure we do turn these sports facilities into something else, but there's always a quid pro quo and it's very difficult.
And it has been turned into, I mean, I still actually, most West Ham fans don't agree with me. I think it's a really good stadium. I enjoy it.
I think it's pegging something to a football team being relegated is a massive error in judgment. I think we can probably all get behind that idea, because if there's one thing that I do know about sports, it's that there's absolutely no guarantee. You know, your principal, what are they called, striker? I'm a rugby fan. Your principal striker can break an ankle. You know, your team can all get norovirus coming off a bus and lose a match, and that flummoxes the entire season. Why on earth would you base a contract on whether or not somebody was going to be relegated?
One thing I would say is that the area around that stadium has been massively and successfully developed.
Absolutely.
East London, going back decades, was a wasteland around that area, and it is much better. You've got the University of I think it's UCL, have got a campus there. Yep. You've got all kinds of
Sadler's Wells.
Yes, so all kinds of cultural, and there's even an industrial area.
And if I was to move back to London, that's the area I would go and live in, because it's really on the up.
It's buzzing, isn't it?
Really
and it has transport links.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, over the weekend, the government has asked UK Sport to explore the feasibility of bidding to host the Olympics somewhere in northern England in the 2040s. Maybe York, Rachel. Is Luke concerned about this, given what he's just said about the 2012 venues, including the London Stadium?
Well, it's a fair point, and I think it'll be interesting to see what it does look like. But we're getting so big now. We're about to have the Football World Cup that's across 3 nations. Countries are actually pulling away from taking on these big events because of the cost and the taxpayers' involvement on it. My brother's actually was the British Olympic swim doctor, medical director for Tokyo 2020. So I loved hearing, from him, his experience of working in elite sport and what it looks like. And the problem is they're amazing venues, but what do you do afterwards? That's a question not only just for the UK but the world. So I'd be keen to see it, but there's going to be a price tag that comes with it.
Part of the reason London won the bid for 2012 was because they had such a strong game plan for what would happen to the areas afterwards.
With the regeneration,
absolutely,
right,
and they had such
tightly.
A strong game plan, particularly for the environmental stuff. So we were going to open up the overground and start moving things around the canals in that area. We're going to move a lot of the debris by canal rather than by road, and all of that went towards why London was a good winning bid.
OK, let's move on to Jess in Bristol, who says the IMF says this country should get rid of the pensions triple lock. Who else needs to state the obvious for one of our political parties to actually call for it to happen? Now, the Green Party leader, Zach Polanski, is not fully committed to maintaining the pensions triple lock, but is also not currently pledged to abolish it either. All of the other major parties support maintaining it. As former economics editor Paul?
Let's just be clear about what the triple lock is. It's a permanent escalator of money from working people to retired people. Mm-hmm. So if we take that choice to keep it, especially now a year, we've suspended it once after COVID. If you keep it, if inflation hits 6% this year, which it might, and you decide to keep it, you are really transferring quite a lot of money from people who work to people who used to work. Now, that's a choice, and I think it's something that we ought to have a rational debate about. I wouldn't rule out abolishing triple lock and focusing a lot more of the government's social resources on people in work, above all young people in work. Student loans are a disaster at the moment, and we've all been talking today about the lack of access of young people who live in cities to affordable homes. If you can do something for one group, you've got to be able to think, why aren't we giving some benefits to other groups?
Luke?
So my concern is, given that I cover social care in my portfolio, is how do you make sure that we've got pensioners and people who are getting to a certain age are protected for the future? And that's really keen. I'd like to work on, or we're certainly working on in private, how do you make that work together? Because the reason the triple lock was brought in was because pensioners were struggling and they can't increase their income like working people can. So what do we want the state of old age to look like when we've got an ageing population? That's the fundamental question. You've got to join the two things together. Now, the government have kicked it into the long grass again for 2029, with things not being set in place fully until 2036, providing it goes on time. And so here is a question that all political parties have dodged. When the Conservatives put it in our last manifesto, we lost. And when Theresa May put it in the manifesto beforehand to try and deal with things like social care, again, we got hammered at the election. So there is a balance to be struck. But at the moment, we say that you need to keep the triple lock to make sure that people have that security of living on that basis. But it's that rounded policy, that the work that Kemi's doing, that's really important.
Rachel?
We haven't prepared for an ageing society, and I think we absolutely need to look at the infrastructure that is necessary. Social care will be part of that, but not the whole of it, because we know that living costs also ride for pensioners on a fixed income. But I think the Joseph Rowntree Foundation have set out a concept of having a guarantee of essentials, ensuring that people are able to afford their living costs. And of course, we know that people in work and people not able to work are really struggling at the moment. So I think we've got to look at how do we redistribute our social welfare into the right places, because many people drawing down on a pension, of course, could have had incredibly high private pensions or indeed a lot of savings and still are able to draw on that. So I do think we need to have that discussion and debate about how we bring that balance between pensionable income as well as earned income.
So reading between the lines, you think the triple lock has had its day?
I think we've got to have the discussion about it, but it certainly isn't. I would say it's certainly not for an immediate change, but I do think we need to ensure that people in our country aren't left struggling. We're dealing with an inequality crisis in our country, the second most inequitable country on our planet, and we've got to address that in an appropriate way. Some people can't afford food on the table, heating their homes, or indeed paying their rent at the moment.
Pensioners as a demographic are the richest members of society.
But we did provide for pensioners and we have seen them now being in a better place of affordability. There are still people in pensioner poverty because of the poor wages that they earned, but that has closed that gap over time. But we need to look into the future on that.
There's two fundamental problems existing at the heart of the conversation about pensions in this country. The first is that pensioners, and indeed every worker, was sold a fundamental lie that the national insurance directly contributed to their own pension rather than acting as a Ponzi scheme for the generations who came before them. And unfortunately, that lie is now coming home to roost on the grounds that the government really doesn't have enough money to keep this going, and it doesn't have enough younger people, enough workers coming in to keep that cycle going. The second problem that we have is talking about the pension changes that came in 2012, which were obviously started under the previous Labour government in their pension commission with the automatic enrolment. We are going to have a generation of people starting around about my age, at the age of 39, who are the best pensioned through work generation in history. We have to be able to have a conversation about the universality of the state pension. It's £12,500 now. There are people who will only have that, and that's very clearly not enough to live on. Why is someone who has put away millions into a private pension also receiving that? It's the universality of it that's going to have to be questioned at some point.
OK, so I'm not quite clear where we are on this. Scrap or keep? Let's have a vote. Luke?
Keep is our position.
Lauren?
Scrap, but scrap the universality at the same time.
Rachel?
Keep for now.
Paul?
Scrap and move to a more universal way of providing other services for the very poor.
OK. Right. Our fun question comes from Kaz in Chelsea. People have been queuing for days to buy a new collaboration between two famous Swiss watch brands, with one of them, Swatch, even having to shut some of their stores because of the levels of demand for these new watches. What would you queue outside for several days for? Rachel?
I'm not materialistic at all, so it certainly wouldn't be goods, but maybe to go and hear a concert at York Minster, that would be a wonderful experience.
OK. Paul?
The reopening of the greatest dance club in history, Wigan Casino.
Take your word for that.
Yeah.
I was at Genting's Casino in Southend in Westcliff-on-Sea on Friday night doing a little speech. I did not partake in the gambling, I wish to say. Lauren?
I think the last thing I queued up for was entrance to a choir day at St John's Waterloo a couple of weekends ago because the doors opened a little late. But I think the thing for purchasing, when I was a child, I remember going very, very early to the Asda on the A3, which got the Harry Potters very, very early in the day. And I would go with my mother to go and pick one up. But there's nothing that I've queued for like that since.
Luke?
Paul Mason's book on the death
You might have to.
Well, that was the most unexpected answer of the whole programme.
Haven't I?
I'm going to say if ABBA reformed, I would queue for a very long time and pay it
to be in it or just to watch?
No, because I wasn't in ABBA, by the way.
Oh
no.
I queue for Eurovision tickets. I'm dying to go to Bulgaria next year.
Said no one ever. No, I am. Thank you all very much. Oh, I'm going to live to regret saying that, aren't I? Bulgarian expat community will have my guts for garters. Now, on tomorrow's panel, we have Rachel's fellow York MP. It's a York week on Cross Question. We have Luke Charters on for Labour, plus Rebecca Smith from the Conservatives, along with the columnist Christina Patterson and the lawyer and writer Marina Wheeler. Coming up in the next hour, marriage at 16. Luke Fury, Tyson Fury's son, has married Paris Fury, the eldest daughter. No, have I got this right? Tyson and Paris Fury's eldest daughter, Venezuela. Are we really doing this? Has got married to Noah Price. And she's only 16 years old. How is that possible when the law in this country means that you can't get married until 18? Well, as Lauren just said, sotto voce, it's because they got married on the Isle of Man. Did you get married at a very young age? Did you live to regret it?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, the Prime Minister has once again dismissed calls for him to set out a timetable to leave Number 10 if Andy Burnham returns to Westminster. Sir Keir Starmer says he wants to lead Labour into the next general election. Earlier, Mr Burnham vowed to change Labour if he's selected to run in the Makerfield by-election and wins a seat. It's understood the current Mayor of Greater Manchester will trigger a leadership contest if he does. But Labour MP for Leeds Central and Headingley, Alex Sobel, told LBC he's doubtful that will happen.
It's not my expectation. I expect that he would come back and potentially serve in the government, try and help us turn this government round. And if then that didn't work, or somebody else, and I think that maybe somebody else is intending to trigger a leadership election, triggered one, then that's a different scenario.
The Prime Minister says whoever becomes Labour's candidates will have his support 100%. Donald Trump has revealed he was planning to restart the war with Iran tomorrow, but he's posted online saying he's accepted a request from several Middle East leaders to hold off the attacks because serious negotiations are taking place. The US president says he's been told a deal will be made which will include no nuclear weapons for Tehran. The International Monetary Fund has raised its growth forecast for Britain's economy this year, but it says that the Iran war will still dampen the outlook. The IMF believes that GDP will rise by 1%, but that would still represent a slowdown from 2025. Mihin Khan is the economics editor of The Times. She told LBC that hearing Andy Burnham say he would follow current fiscal rules if he was in Number 10 has encouraged the markets.
Yes, the government bond markets today have not been particularly sort of scary. Friday was a pretty tough day across the world, but definitely for the UK. So bizarrely enough, the IMF, intentionally or not, may have had more of a say in shaping some of the parameters of our fiscal debate than they probably would have liked.
And the RMT has called off strikes by drivers on the London Underground planned for this week. Members were due to stage 2 24-hour walkouts from midday tomorrow and then again on Thursday. It's a dispute over voluntary compressed 4-day working weeks. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 128 points at 10,323. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather: rain sweeping into the northeast and turning windy tonight. Showers in the southwest and northern Northern Ireland by dawn, lows of 3. Staying windy tomorrow, rain clearing to sunny spells and scattered showers, but some of these will be heavy and thundery with highs of 19 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Good evening. 5 minutes past 9 is the time on LBC. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10. Well, you've been hearing that news story in the news bulletins tonight about Married at First Sight. We're not going to talk about Married at First Sight. We're going to talk about getting married at a very young age. And the hook for this is a story that's been around over the last couple of days because Tyson and Paris Fury, for the uninitiated, Tyson Fury is a very famous boxer. I don't really do boxing. I'm actually quite in favour of banning boxing, but I know that's not a very popular viewpoint. Anyway, their eldest daughter, Venezuela. Yeah, really, Venezuela. I mean, why would you call your daughter Venezuela? Is it because she was conceived there or something like the Beckhams do? I really don't know, but I don't even want to know, frankly. Anyway, she has got married to Noah Price, complete with a 50-foot train dress and wearing Crocs. Classy. Now, the couple stunned guests with their outfits as they tied the knot at the Victorian Royal Chapel of St John's on the Isle of Man. The wedding comes a year after the young couple got engaged during Venezuela's birthday celebrations in 2025. But the celebrity wedding, which is reportedly being filmed for their Netflix series, of course it is, At Home with the Furies, has left people wondering how it could happen with the England wedding age set at 18. People wanting to get wed in England and Wales must be 18 years old or older to get married or form a civil partnership. Now, that was raised from 16 in February 2023, completely abolishing the option to marry at 16 or 17, even with parental consent. But the rules are different in the Isle of Man. Aren't they always, on so many different things, where the Furies moved with their children earlier this year following security breaches at their former home in Morecambe. Now, the age limit on the Isle of Man is 16, as long as they have parental consent. Anyone over 18 does not need parental consent. Now, the Furies have continuously defended their decision to let Venezuela marry at a young age. Some people might say that decision was Caracas. Get it? No, I know. Whenever you have to explain a joke, it never really works, does it? On This Morning recently, Paris said Venezuela is so mature for her years. She's done so much in such a short time just because of who she is and the fact that she's got 6 younger brothers and sisters that she helped bring up. I can't deny it. I can't deny her because I was 17 when I got engaged. She's obviously following in my footsteps, so how can I judge her in any way? I know she's young, but I think she's found the person she loves, and if she's happy, I will completely support her. What do you make of that? Because 16 does seem incredibly young to get married. But I have been shown the pictures of the wedding. I mean, I have to say she looks a lot older than 16. And there are plenty of 16-year-olds who have sort of old heads on their shoulders, I suppose. And you can't really stereotype a particular age. I'm sure there are plenty of 22-year-olds who aren't emotionally adult enough to get married, but they go ahead anyway, and they don't need any parental consent. Is it really possible to have fallen in love and met someone as a 16-year-old? I'm kind of relying on you to tell me, yes, it is, and that you did. I've got a couple of friends who met people, when they were both at very young ages, and they ended up getting married, but they didn't get married until much later. In fact, one I can remember, somebody from my school days, I think they met when they were 14 years old and ended up getting married, but I think they were in their early 20s when they got married. So they were quite sure that it's the right thing to do. Have you been a parent of a 16-year-old who wanted to get married? I mean, how do you have that conversation with your 16-year-old daughter, or maybe 16-year-old son, but I suspect it may well be predominantly daughters. How do you have that conversation? 0345 6060 973. Oh dear, the insults are already coming in. Someone says, What a sneering man you are. It used to be legal to marry at 16 in the UK with parental consent. Yeah, I've just said that. I do know that. But I'm not a parent, but I think if I had a 16-year-old daughter, I would be very, very reluctant to give parental consent, even if I thought that her future intended husband was a great guy and was right for her. I think at that age, surely, you want to sort of maybe just spend a few more years making sure that you've made the right decision. Does anyone have the maturity at that age to make that kind of decision? Well, maybe you did. Maybe you got married at 16 or 17 or even 18. Is it something that you were always certain would work and it has worked? Or did you live to regret it? Why would someone want to get married that early in their life? 0345 6060 973. Joe Hemmings joins me, a behavioural psychologist. Joe, very good evening. What do you make of this, of 16-year-olds getting married?
Okay, I'm a bit torn here because impartially and psychologically, 16 is still an age of major emotional, neurological, identity development. They're still developing areas linked to judgment, impulse control, emotional regulation. It's a very adult commitment to marry. It involves, permanence and compromise and finances and sexuality and children. It's very young at 16. Their identity hasn't really formed. However, in certain communities and certain cultures, and this, I think, is a traveller community at heart, it is quite commonplace to marry at 16. It sort of establishes strong family values, loyalty, religion, community stability. It's quite different in certain communities and cultures. And as you said, her mother did exactly the same at the same sort of age. And so it goes on. And that doesn't really question the strength or the maturity of the marriage. It's part of the culture. But if I was to take myself out of a community or of a culture and just go to ordinary Joe on the street at 16, no, it's a really tough call because most people are not ready. And you will have listeners, of course, who say, well, I did or my family did, and it's all been marvellous. And it's quite possible it will be, but psychologically speaking, probably not ready for it.
It's interesting what you say about your brain not having matured at that age, because I read somewhere that our brains, I think this may have been men rather than women, but our brains don't actually mature until we're 25 years old.
It's 25, correct. Yeah. You've read it.
Which is quite frightening.
That's the prefrontal cortex, which doesn't develop fully till 25.
We actually have MPs who are younger than 25.
Yes, indeed. So the decision-making may be slightly impaired. But it is that sort of judgment. It is decision-making. It is emotional regulation. These are all things, yeah, you're absolutely correct, particularly in men. It's slightly younger in women that don't mature till 25, but plenty of people get married under 25 for all the right reasons. But 16 is a highly impressionable age unless you come from a culture, unless you come from a community where there is that history and tradition. I think the chances are unlikely it will work out, but there will be people who say that, of course, that they've survived it and it's been brilliant.
But wasn't that, and feel free to shoot me down in flames here, but wasn't the reason for upping the age to 18 3 years ago because there were too many stories about forced marriages of younger girls who were effectively sent to often Pakistan? And I mean, Naz Shah, the Labour MP, I interviewed her about her childhood memoir, which is called Honoured, which is I think it's the best book I've read this year, where her family in Pakistan tried to marry her off, and I can't remember what the age was, but I think it was quite a way younger than 16, and she tried to resist it, but it went through. Now, it wasn't a marriage that was recognised in this country, but I think that was the reason that the age was increased.
Correct. You're absolutely right. But I think there's a difference between consensual marriage of choice and arranged marriage at a very young age. And there would be the difference, I think, between the Asian families and the traveller community, for example. They might encourage it, but they don't arrange it. So you have got some decision making based on that when you're 16. But look, generally speaking, it is an age when, and also these are times when you've missed out on a lot of independence, a lot of experience. I worry that people who marry very young kind of later down the line feel, what have I missed out on? What can't I cope with? You know, how do I deal with conflict in my relationship? It's the experience running up to it that's lacking, and that often will cause issues. So there are, there were sort of legal reasons, I suppose, for increasing it to 18, but there are also key psychological reasons why people are generally not ready, but there's always exceptions to that rule.
Well, I think that is the point, isn't it? That there are probably, and I hope we're going to hear from one or two of the exceptions over the course of the next 3/4 of an hour, because there are people who just know, you just know that this is the right thing for you to do. And it must be very difficult when you encounter parents who are, understandably in many ways, very obstructive.
Concerned, yeah. And of course you would be. I mean, as a parent myself, I think, what would I felt like if my boys had wanted to get married at 16? You know, pretty anxious about it and probably trying to dissuade them. And it may be they will be that same partner and they get married at 23. But it's that sort of hold off for now, what's the hurry, feeling that I think most parents get, because you know that your child still has to fully appreciate their identity and their place in life. And yeah, there are people with, as you say, old heads on young shoulders and vice versa. So we can't be, completely one way about this. However, generally speaking, psychologically, you would not encourage someone, unless it is a consensual marriage within a particular community, to get married at 16.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe. That's Joe Hemming there, behavioural psychologist. So, over to you now. I'm sitting in slight trepidation, if I'm honest, because I think this is a very delicate subject for many people, and I completely understand why. So there are various questions that we can cover over the course of the next 45 minutes. I'd like you to answer them. Is it really possible to have fallen in love and met the one as a 16-year-old? That's what really underlies this whole conversation. Does anyone have the maturity at that age to make that kind of decision? And why would someone want to get married that early into their life? And if you're a parent and your daughter or your son has come to you and said, I want to get married at a very young age. I mean, let's almost take 16 out of it because the law now is 18. What's been your reaction? How did you deal with that? 17 minutes past 9.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
20 past 9. Someone on Twitter called The People says, I love it when Iain has to do a phone-in he clearly has no interest in. Always the best radio. Well, you make a big mistake there, because one of the things, when you've presented on talk radio for 16 years, it's very rare that a new subject comes up that you haven't actually covered before. And I love it when that happens. And this is what this is. I've never talked about this before on the radio, so I have a huge interest in this. I don't have a huge knowledge about it, which is why I'm asking you to provide me with some. Norman says, Iain, did you know you were gay at 16, or did you leave it a few years just to check you were mature enough? Some people know. I kind of did know way before 16, if I'm honest. I think even when I was sort of 7 or 8, I kind of knew I was different. I wouldn't have said I knew I was gay at 7 or 8, but I certainly did by the time I was 16. But in those days, you didn't really act on it. Well, I certainly didn't. Anyway, enough about that. Let's go to our first caller. It's Morris, a first-time caller in Preston. Hello, Morris.
Yes, good evening to you.
Hello.
So my daughter, she got married, Bridget, at 16. But we come from an Irish travelling background, and we had to get married, through my parents, and it was all our tradition, and we went over to the Isle of Man. This is our tradition in the sense of my daughter and the lad she's with, they've been married for a long time now.
Why did you have to go to the Isle of Man? Because at that point, it would have been legal in Britain.
Because we've got family over there anyway. It's a tradition that we go to the Isle of Man. I mean, we go to different parts of the country anyway. We travel, but it's just the Isle of Man is a lot more. We find a bit like the race. We find more acceptance there as well for these travellers. Also, that I mean, some people may say that's a loophole today, but it's not. It's something that's been going on for years, donkey years. I don't see there's nothing wrong with it. They've been married for a long time, a daughter and her partner. We call them country people, but a lot of people are in the houses and things that, you might find it very strange, but this has been going on for donkey's years.
And when your daughter came to you and said, or maybe it was her intended that came to you and said, we want to get married, because you come from that community, you wouldn't have been shocked, I guess. Whereas I suspect if it was somebody from a different background, they might have been quite shocked, and their natural reaction would have been to say, "Are you sure?"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wasn't really shocked at all, because I knew the lad. He's very close to our family. I've seen him before. He's a lovely lad. He's a fighting lad actually now, but he's when he was being brought up through my friend, his father. It was a tradition. We're very close, our travelling community.
So if any of your friends who are not part of the travelling community, and they had children, because 16 is still classed as a child, and they came to you and said, look, I know your daughter got married at 16, my daughter's come to me, she wants to get married, I don't want her to, but on the other hand, I don't want to alienate her, I want to handle this right. What would your advice be?
I would always, we would wait until she's 16. I mean, if my daughter was 6 months earlier than that, then that's too young, actually. I mean, that's the problem. That's the crossover. Where is the crossover? Yeah. 14 to 16, 14 in my eyes is still a young child. It's a child. It's not a teenager, but 16 is in the travelling community, it's a young woman.
Okay. Maurice, thank you very much indeed. Here's a text from somebody who says, I met my husband when I was 14 and he was 17. My mother thought I was too young to know who I wanted to marry. We got married 10 years later and enjoyed 44 years of happiness before he sadly passed away in 2020. Of course we had our ups and downs, but we were each other's best friend. He said he knew I was the one he would marry when he set his eyes on me. He was the perfect gentleman and sadly missed by us all. That's from Angela. I mean, that is a lovely story, isn't it? And it proves that, because I think that the natural, I suppose, conclusion that some people will draw is you get married at 16 and you regret it later. And I haven't got figures for how many 16-year-olds where their marriages survive more than 10 years. But I suppose anecdotally, people will often think, well, that young marriages tend to end more than older ones. I don't know if that's the case, but that's certainly what I would imagine is the case. Alfie's in Manchester. Alfie, hi.
Hi. I got married at 17 and my wife was 16 and a half. And we had a couple of kids. Now in my very early 60s, my kids are, I'm a terrible father, I can't remember their age precisely. They are actually 38 and 44. And we got grandkids 13 to 2, that kind of 4 of them. And we are young 60s, fit, healthy, middle class, wealthy. People don't believe we are the age we are. And I wouldn't change a thing.
And did any of your children come to you and say, I want to get married at a young age?
No, now there's a conundrum. No, my kids got married in their kind of mid and late 20s. So one was mid-20s.
Yeah, which is quite normal. But if they had, what would you have said?
Oh, I'd have probably beat them with a stick with a nail in it. Very likely. No, and that is a conundrum. I think you take your money, you pay your money, you take your choice. Marrying early, having kids early, you grow up with them and you enjoy your life with them, and it's fantastic now. We're all, we could go out as a group, apart from the grandkids, and people can't tell the difference, and we're as fit as our kids are. And so I can't recommend it, but I wouldn't change a thing for me. There it is.
Well, it's all
conundrum. I don't lose sleep over it. That's just the way life is.
Well, it's all one-way traffic so far. Everybody thinks it's all a good idea because of their own experiences. And you can't gainsay people's own experiences, can you? That's the one thing that you have to learn. Alice, thank you very much. Alison says, I was married at 18, but I was always very emotionally mature. I'm still married to the same lad. I'm 65 now. Fascinating phone-in. Love the way you call him a lad, in that he's going to be around your age as well, Alison. Jane's in Cambridge. Hi, Jane.
Oh, hello. Good evening, Ian. Thank you for allowing me to be on your lovely show. Gretna Green, I haven't heard anyone. I didn't run off to Gretna Green.
I mean,
just very quickly.
Gretna Green must have gone out of business now.
I was wondering, yes, because of my age now, but I do recall in the 60s, 70s, there were loads of young couples running off to Gretna Green to get married. I think they were underage as well in that time, but that's all I can say. But I haven't had the experience of running off myself. But I thought I'd ring in quickly because I hadn't heard anyone mention Gretna Green.
No, and what do you make of this, Jane, that even now in Scotland you can still get married at 16 without parental consent?
Well, there you are. Times change, haven't they, for everything now?
But it wouldn't be recognised in England and Wales, apparently.
No, I don't suppose it would be.
I mean, you would have thought. I mean, is that really a devolved matter? You would have thought that we ought to have the same laws about marriage.
Person. Like you said earlier on, that lady who got her mother, I think, said that she doesn't look her age on, she's a mature person. But then again, people do get married, they love one another, and that's,
Well, you'd hope everyone that gets married loves one another, but of course we live in a world where there are people from different backgrounds who still believe that arranged marriages are a good thing. I mean, even young people in those same communities some of them still swear by it. I mean, I find that, utterly bizarre in the 21st century that anyone would think an arranged marriage is a good thing. But you'll have, feel free to phone in on that subject as well, because it is a fascinating subject that teenagers, people in their 20s from different backgrounds, it's not just one religion either, from different backgrounds will think that arranged marriages are still a good thing. Jamie says, so many of our grandparents and great-grandparents got married around 16 years old. It may not be normal nowadays, but those young marriages seem to last a lot longer than marriages nowadays. Well, that's because there was a great deal of shame about getting divorced. Even, I would say, up to the 1980s, maybe even beyond that, divorce was still a shameful thing. And you were sometimes even shunned by people in your village, particularly if you lived in a sort of traditional conservative village background, and someone got divorced. I mean, they basically had the mark of shame on them. We find that completely difficult to understand nowadays, but it wasn't that long ago that divorce was seen in that way. So people who did get married at a very young age, they stayed married because they didn't want to be shunned by people, not just in their local communities, but in their own families as well. If you've got any experience of that, give me a call as well. 0345 6060 973. It's 9:30 on LBC. Katie Dartford has the news headlines.
The Prime Minister insists he won't be walking away from number 10 despite growing calls for Keir Starmer to resign. Potential leadership challenger Andy Burnham's calling for a serious rewiring of the country. Donald Trump's revealed he planned to resume military attacks on Iran tomorrow. The US president says this won't happen now after a request from several Middle East leaders, but he's instructed his forces to be ready on a moment's notice if an acceptable deal isn't reached. And Channel 4 has removed all former seasons of Married at First Sight UK from its streaming and linear platforms. Serious allegations against past contributors have been made. They're understood to deny this, while the broadcaster says it's not guilty of failures in welfare protocols. LBC weather, rain sweeping in to the northeast and turning windy tonight. Showers in the southwest and Northern Ireland by dawn. Lows of 3 degrees.
This is LBC. Listen on the move with the LBC app.
At John Lewis Money, we know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap and the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
May we have your attention? Introducing the Volkswagen May event. Get an extra £1,000 towards your finance deposit with Solutions PCP 7.9% APR representative across the range, including the amazing Golf, Tiguan, and all-electric ID3. Major. I said it was in May, right?
Yes.
It's the final weekend, ends the 18th of May. Visit your nearest Volkswagen retailer. You may just find the car you've been looking for.
Stop it.
Participating retailers. Excludes T-Roc ID bars and Golf GTI 50. ID3 from stock only. Indemnities may be required. Registered by 30th of August. Volkswagen Finance.
Mr. and Little Miss are back in Happy Meal and they're off on a road trip. Your little one can go somewhere exciting with Little Miss Brave, laugh all the way there with Mr. Tickle, or make up an adventure all of their own. On this road trip, anything's possible. Some fun, some food, it's all inside this Happy Meal. Until the 8th of June from 11am. Includes one pre-selected book or toy while stocks last. Subject to availability.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
9:32. 16-year-old children, says Damien, can vote at 16 in devolved elections in Wales and Scotland and in elections for the Scottish Parliament. And, of course, under new legislation, they'll be able to vote in the next general election too in England as well. Well, throughout the United Kingdom. Neither are right. They are children, as was I at that age. By all means, stay together. What difference will another 2 years make if you're meant to be together? I think that's a very easy thing to say when you're not involved in that situation, because if you are 16 or 17 and you are convinced that you want to marry the person you intend to marry, nobody's going to change your mind on that, are they? And people can say, well, another 2 years, that won't hurt. That doesn't necessarily wash with the people that you're talking to. And that's really what I want to hear from you in the next 27 minutes on this programme. Whether you've been in that situation where you've been a parent and your child has come to you at the age of 16 or 17 and said, right, I want to get married. How do you handle that situation as a parent? Is it something that you handle jointly with the other parent? Or is it, I mean, I suspect a lot of people will think, well, it's usually the mother that will have the conversation and can probably do it in a much more empathetic way than the father. Because I think if we're talking about a 16-year-old girl, I think, again, stereotypically, I think fathers will probably be more prone to be against their 16-year-old daughter getting married, possibly, than the mother. But again, I don't know that. It's just an assumption that I would draw. So feel free to challenge me on that one. Mark's in Exeter. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Ian.
Hi.
Hi there. Good to speak to you. So back in 1982, when I was 15, I met a 13-year-old girl. Basically swam up to my dinghy. I was in Sidmouth in Devon on holiday. 13-year-old swam up to my dinghy that I was paddling around in. I decided to move down to Devon to be with her.
How old were you?
I was 15. I moved down, and at the age of 16, she was 16 when we got engaged, so she was still in the last year of school, which was year 11 now. It would have been the 5th year then. And then a year later, we got married, so she was 17, I was 19. The weird thing is, we've been married 40 years now, or coming up to 40 years.
How did you know at that age?
Well, it sounds really rubbish, really sort of stupid, but coming away from holiday, so I lived in Reading at the time, and coming away, I think we had sort of met up with each other for about 3 or 4 days on holiday. And coming away, I was just in tears. I'd fallen in love with the girl.
I did that when I was your age, and you have a holiday romance, and you're very, very attached to the person, and you can't imagine life without them.
No, that's right.
But that's because you're 15.
Well, yeah. I mean, I finished school the following year, and then, like I said, moved down to Devon. I guess what was maybe a little bit different with us is that I moved in with her auntie. So I started to assimilate myself with it in their family, maybe. The other thing is my wife was sort of independent from about the age of 2 or 3. She wanted to be her own boss and do her own thing. And for me, my mum left home when I was 12. So I'd become quite independent as well. So I think between the two of us, we were quite independent. But the thing is that I worked as a mental health coach, and I'm very aware in a school, and I'm very aware that the brain does stop developing at the age of 25. And working with teenagers, I can see how immature they were, and practically every teenager I worked with, I would say wouldn't have been ready for marriage. And yet, back then, when I was that age, I was definitely ready for marriage. Both of us were. As soon as we got engaged, we started to collect things for our wedding drawer, whatever it was called. And then we bought a house whilst my wife was, I think she just turned 17 then. She couldn't go on the mortgage deeds because she was too young. I just finished my youth training scheme. Luckily, we got a cheap house.
I was going to say, if you're on the YTS, how on earth could you have afforded a house?
I just finished, yeah. I'd literally come off and had been offered a job, and we bought a buy half, rent half house, which was available in those days. But if anybody had said to us that we weren't getting married at that point, we literally would have laughed in the face. We felt like it was the obvious thing to do. We were in love. We wanted to live together for the rest of our lives. We just didn't feel like children. So I think your guest that you had on earlier, the psychologist, was it? Whilst there were lots of things she said that I didn't sort of agree with, I think I do agree with the fact that you don't really reach maturity until you're 25. But she also said there are exceptions to the rule, and I think that is the thing.
So you said both you and your now wife were fairly independent, but what did your families make of this?
Well, my dad, who I was living with at the time, because like I said, my mum left home. He's always said, and right until the point when he died very recently, that he was really happy for me to go and live with a family who he knew would sort of look after me, really, and do the right thing for me.
But the fact that you were going out with you were kind of underage yourself, I suppose, but the fact that you were going out with an underage girl, I mean, did that concern him?
Well, not really, because I suppose I was sort of underage myself, and it didn't seem wrong. The fact that she was 30, I suppose when I moved down, she was 14. The fact that I was 16, she was 14, it didn't seem wrong at the time, really. Looking at it now and working with teenagers, especially, and having my own children who are now in their 30s, it does seem a bit crazy. But I can honestly say that for us, both then, we were determined, and then finding out that the laws recently changed and that you can't get married at 16. If the law had said we couldn't get married then, well, probably would have tried. We would have broken the law. We would have tried everything possible to. Well, no, we wouldn't have done. We would have waited.
Well, you couldn't have done. What you could have done, I suppose. But you see, in 1982, and again, people who are now, say, in their 20s won't maybe understand this, but living together was called living in sin.
Yes, exactly.
And again, there was a shameful aspect to that, wasn't there?
Well, exactly. And my wife's dad was a lay preacher, a Methodist lay preacher. So when I bought that house, which was about 8 months before we got married, we didn't live in it. At another thing. We didn't live in the house. We bought the house, but we waited until we got back from our honeymoon before moving in together into that house. So even that is totally different from now. So the world was just a very different place back then, Ian, as you know.
Well, it was in many ways. Is your wife listening to this?
She is, yeah.
Does she want to come on?
I could ask her, because obviously she was the younger person in this. Yeah, hang on a minute. Bear with me.
Right, well, while he's doing that, I'll read out a text from Peter who says, I got married at 16. I'm now 57 and very happily married to someone else, obviously. I suspect that Mark's wife is not going to want to do this, but we're about to find out, I hope. Otherwise, I shall have to keep padding. Maybe I can find another text to read. Somebody says, my husband and I were married at 18 years old in Willesden Registry Office. Doesn't get more romantic than that, does it? As long as you are given parental consent, it's fine. Mark, are you back?
I am, Ian. Yeah. No, she don't want to come on.
No, I got the feeling that she might not, and that's absolutely fine. I just thought it'd be quite interesting to get a sort of woman's perspective on this.
Yeah, I mean, I asked her before when I sort of I had told her I was coming on, and she was fine, and she said for me to come on the radio. So that was all right. But I think she was more for marriage than me, actually. I was a typical bloke and sort of dragging my heels a little bit. And her mum was all for it as well. I think that possibly it was down to the fact that her parents knew me really well.
Yeah.
But by then, if they hadn't, then they would have been a lot more cautious. So it's a very sort of individual situation, our situation. But I think
it's very interesting that so far every single caller has had a relatively positive story to tell, and we haven't had anybody ring up and say, well, yeah, I wanted to get married at 16, but both of our parents were dead set against it and they just wouldn't let us do it. I'm sure that has happened, but nobody's calling in to say that at the moment.
No, and I think the beauty of it all, Ian, is it's a fantastic thing to actually grow up with somebody else. You know, we've known each other since we were children. Teenagers, we've gone through having, children together. Now we're getting grey hair, and it's just an amazing thing to be able to actually share a life together and watch both of you sort of develop and grow old together. It really is an amazing thing. And I used to think that was all a bit poppycock, hearing old people say that when they sort of look back. But it is incredible. Obviously, the downside is that one day, after so many years, one of us will be on our own. But that's just part of it. The other thing is that you can experience your grandchildren whilst you're still sort of young, fit and able.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Because I know Angela Rayner's talked about this quite a lot, where I think she had her first child when she was it 16 or 17?
Yeah.
And at the age of 37, she became a grandmother, which,
exactly.
I mean, you and I were brought up in an age where we imagine grandmothers were all like in their 60s, 70s or 80s.
Exactly. Yeah. And we keep reminding ourselves, we are the grandparent, and then we remember what our grandparents were like at a similar age to us.
Yeah.
And things were so different then. But yeah, it's so we do the usual thing now where we do school pickups and we have the children round for sleepovers. And I think if we had put off marriage for 10 years, 20 years, 15 years or whatever, then obviously, things would be very different. And that is going to be the case for the current generation, isn't it?
Well, I hope your wife, who's obviously listening to this, Mark, will think that you've done her proud, because you absolutely have. Thank you very much indeed for coming on. This one says, no name here, please to put a name on text. My mother got married at 16. My father was 8 years older. They were married for 53 years, only parted by my father's death. That is the kind of thing you want to hear, isn't it? Well, you want to hear that even if people did get married at a young age, it did actually last. But I'm slightly surprised that all we've had so far are really positive calls. I don't particularly want negative calls or sort of people who've got sort of horrible sub-stories to tell, but this cannot be typical of the way people react to younger marriages, can it? 0345 6060 973. It's always nice to have positive calls, though, isn't it? Because we do so much where we're talking about politics, the world situation, which is often doom and gloom. It's actually quite nice to get a series of calls that are all very positive. It's 9:46.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Wes Streeting and Andy Burnham clash over whether to reverse Brexit, but is that really the issue you want the Labour leadership rivals to be focusing on? Plus, is it fair to jail parents for their children's crimes?
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Feel every pass and every goal. Discover the next generation of televisions at John Lewis. Experience the full clarity of the latest RGB and OLED technology. Brought to you by some of the world's best brands. Price matched against 25 leading retailers with a 5-year guarantee on all TVs. Your best view of every game is available right now at John Lewis. It's football upgraded. T's and C's and exclusions apply. See johnlewis.com for details.
At John Lewis Money, we know your home is more than an address. It's the sunlight pouring in. Well, sometimes. The coffee on tap and the best spot on the sofa. It's why our home insurance is thoughtfully designed with 3 levels of flexible cover for the home you've created. Because when you notice the details, you notice the difference. Search John Lewis Money. Terms and exclusions apply. John Lewis Finance Limited is authorised for insurance distribution and credit broking by the Financial Conduct Authority.
Now, listen carefully. I want you to think of selling your car. Who's going to buy that car? Keep thinking. Struggling to know where to look? On Motorway, there are 7,500 verified dealers who are ready and waiting to bid on your car. It's not magic, it's Motorway. Sell your car today at motorway.co.uk.
There's one green bottle sat on my fridge shelf. This green and white bottle that supports my gut health. Beautiful by nature, beautiful by name. It's the tastiest way to up my gut health game.
Beautiful Gut Health. Switch your yogurt to the UK's #1 kefir and give your gut and your summer a lift. Kefir is a source of calcium which contributes to the normal function of digestive enzymes. For verification of UK's #1 kefir, see beautifulguthealth.com/radio.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
9:49 on LBC. If you just tuned in, maybe you're tuning in just to hear Ben Kentish. I mean, who wouldn't? If you just tuned in, we're talking about young marriages on the back of the daughter of Tyson and Paris Fury, who has the rejoices in the wonderful name of Venezuela. What do you think is short for Venezuela? Zuela? Veni? It beggars belief, really, doesn't it? Anyway, she's got married to 19-year-old Noah Price, who I believe is also a boxer. Am I right? Yes, they're all nodding at me. He doesn't look like a boxer, I have to say. But they've got married on the Isle of Man. She's 16 and a half years old. So that sparked our discussion on whether 16-year-olds are too young to get married. Well, in England, you can't, and I think in Wales, you cannot get married now at 16. The law changed in 2023. You have to be 18. It used to be that you could get married at 16 with parental consent. Anyone think that that was a bad change in the law? I don't remember there being huge amounts of controversy about it at the time. Alex says, anyone too young to marry is definitely too young to join the armed forces and to enter any kind of legal contract. See, that is an interesting point, isn't it? Because we've always seen 18 years old as the effective age of maturity. But then you can do other things at 16, or could. Fewer things now, but then they want to allow you to vote at 16. There is a sort of quandary there, isn't there? I'm not sure there'll ever be a sort of a conclusion which you could actually justify without it being hypocritical in some way. Let's go to Robbie in Streatham. Robbie, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Ian. How are you doing? All right?
Good, thank you. What would you like to tell us?
Well, I've always been a proponent of when children go to school at a very early age of, say, 5, when they've got an understanding, 5 or 6, to teach the children respect for each other and, especially the opposite sex. And then they should be taught liberal studies. In their liberal studies, they should be taught domestic science. They should be how to sew, how to cook, and also how to do their finances. And I think an hour a week would be well set aside. But then on top of that, they should have a liberal studies within that class as to about relationships and to see you've really got to get to know someone. 16.
Well, I think that does happen, doesn't it? I mean, that is part of what used to be called sex education. I think it's got some fancy name now, which I now can't remember.
No, right. Well, I don't have any children, so I had no experience of that, actually, sadly. But nevertheless, I do find that in this day and age, there's a lot of a fairly high divorce rate, where people don't think before they get married and spend enough time, and they need to be taught what to look for in a relationship. 16, I don't think, is too young to get married, but I do think it's a little bit too young from the point of finances, because when I got married, which was at a later stage in life, I wanted to make sure that I was financially sound before I decided to have any children, so that I didn't have to struggle to put bread on the table. 16 is a little bit too early. You're not in a position really you're at the early stages of getting a career together if you've left school at 16. So it's in one way it's a rash decision to do that unless you've got financial support from your parents.
But emotions aren't always about rationality, are they? I mean, you can't tell your emotions that they need to be logical. But sometimes they are, but often they're not.
Oh, well, this is it. This is where the chemistry in your body, the chemicals in your body interfere with the electrical circuits that you run on.
Yeah, but that can happen at any age.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it can. I mean, but in my opinion, I can't see anything wrong. I mean, I was quite a precocious child. I mean, by the time I was 13, I was very interested in girls, these species that had appeared before me.
I'm sure they love being called a species.
And I needed to get to know them better because they were quite different from me. And they were quite gentle and soft and, sort of...
You obviously didn't go to my school.
No, and... and of course, visually, they were more beautiful than the boys, so I always was more attracted to girls than I was to boys. And in fact, even now, I have more girlfriends than I do, platonic, that is, than I do male friends. I much prefer to be in the company of women.
So do I, but I'm not sure what that says about either of us, because the logic that you're using means that I should be, as a gay man, I should be sort of have more male friends than I have female friends, but I think it's actually the other way round.
Well, yeah, but women feel very safe in the company of a gay guy because a lot of women feel that men are predators and get very scared. I've noticed that quite often.
Yeah, but what you're effectively there, you're calling me a predator there.
Well, no, I'm not. No, you're not a predator. I'm saying
no, I'm not.
Women consider, men that are totally hetero to be predators,
yeah, I know.
Whereas they feel safe in the hands of a gay person because they're not going to hit on them, and be pester them, sort of thing. But I've always been very at ease in the company of women. And in fact, it's always a woman that leads the way. A man can't make a relationship with a girl unless the girl wants a relationship.
Well, if only it were that. If only that were the case all the time, Robbie, we'd live in a much happier society. But thank you very much indeed. Paul says, I believe that if we cannot put the laws of the land before religion, then we have massive issues as a society. The law must apply equally to everyone, regardless of faith or background. Tom is a first-time caller in Exeter. Tom, good evening.
Oh, yeah.
What would you like to say?
My grandparents on my mum's side, they got married early. My grandma was 16. My granddad was 19. And my memories of them, they never spoke to each other. They hated each other. I didn't really notice it at the time, but when I've talked to my cousins and that since we've been growing up, we've just realised that none of us actually saw them speak to each other. It was kind of weird.
Well, and do you reckon it was like that from almost day one, or was it one of these infatuations that just, after a time, the infatuation just disappeared?
I don't think it was from day one, no. I've seen photos and they look really happy on holidays and stuff like that. I think it's probably just over the years, like a lot of marriages, fizzle out. But because, like you said earlier on, it was, really frowned upon to get divorced. And, they would have been shunned. So they just stayed together, just stayed living together.
It's a very sad way to live, isn't it?
It is a sad way to live. Like my son and his girlfriend, they're 17. They've been together nearly 18 months now, but they would not have even thought about marriage yet, which I'm glad about, really, after seeing what my grandparents went through.
Yeah.
But obviously it's a lot easier now if anything did happen for them to get divorced. So
it's a terrible thing when you hear stories like that, because we all have only one life, and you think that you live all of that life with somebody that you clearly can't stand. I mean, it doesn't get worse than that, does it, really? No,
that's true. And I do feel really sorry for my grandmother, because I think it was. I think my granddad was quite difficult to live with. Like, not hard, not abusive or anything like that. I think he was quite selfish, but he loved me and my brothers and stuff like that. But yeah, it's.
Well, I suppose
my grandmother.
That's one consolation. If they hadn't got together, you wouldn't be here.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Always try and find the positive side of a story. Tom,
yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank you very much indeed. Kevin says, so I was 16 and my girlfriend was 17. We never got married. However, she was pregnant. We've been together ever since. 3 grandchildren and still not married. I mean, come on, do the right thing, for goodness sake, Kevin. Patrick says, my gran and grandar, is that a Welsh thing, got married at Gretna Green and were married until their 80s when they passed away. Oh, it's a Northern Irish thing. It's from Belfast. I mean, that's another heartwarming story, isn't it? Let's take this final text. Malcolm says, the legal age for marriage should be 18, Ian. Parents should have no say on when a woman or man, which they would be at 18, can be married legally. The nation owes young people the right to be protected from marriage before they're realistically old enough to cope with it, survive it, and hopefully both thrive in it. I'm in one, Ian, and it's never easy, realistically, without one of a couple giving more than they should. Well, and so say all of us. Thank you for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back tomorrow from 7. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's James Max. But right now, it's Ben Kentish.
Ian, thank you very much indeed. Hello there. A very, very good Monday evening to you. Welcome to Late Nights with Ben Kentish right here on LBC.